Howdy folks, welcome to CompTIA A Plus Core 1 practice questions. Now you can see this is version 3, so there is a version 1 and a version 2. If you have not checked them out yet, please go and check those ones out as well. If you're wondering for which version the exam this is meant, it was designed specifically for the 1200 series. However, this can also be used for the 1300 and even the 1400 series when they eventually get released. Why, you wonder? Well, because the exams and the course normally tends to stay about 95% the same. Yes, a couple of things gets added, a couple of things gets removed, but it's 95% the same. Once you start getting to the 1500 series, then you might want to start looking at newer versions of this video, because then the difference is probably going to be about 15% or so. So, yeah. Anyway, folks, let's get straight to it. Question 1. You need to use BitLocker on laptops to encrypt the hard drives. Which of the following features is used for security in a laptop and is used by BitLocker? Now, looking at the options I've given you guys there, is it CMOS? No. CMOS, folks, is generally where you'll save settings like your boot order, your startup order, some of you guys might know it. So it's going to save your system time, whatever device your PC is supposed to boot up with first, if you have any overclocking settings, if you have perhaps a BIOS or a UEFI password, that is what that is. It's got nothing to do with BitLocker, and it's got nothing to do with encryption. If we look at option B there, TPM, yes folks, that is the answer. TPM, folks, is short for Trusted Platform Module. If you don't know, it's an actual chip on the motherboard that stores the encryption keys, does the encryption and all that, and, well, it's used by BitLocker. So that's the answer here. Looking at answer C, winners hello, that indeed does have to do with security, but it's got nothing to do with encryption, and it's got nothing to do with hard drives. Winners hello is a feature that's built into Windows, which allows you to go and, for example, use biometrics like fingerprint scan, face recognition, or you can go make use of a PIN. But this is meant for your operating system itself. If we look at answer D, a BIOS password, yes, also security, but it's got nothing to do with encryption. That is a password we normally put on our BIOS, or, well, UEFI in some cases, and it prevents people from going in there so they can go and, for example, change the boot order. Because if they can change the boot order, they can potentially boot from something else, like a flash drive, and then they can go and gain access to our machine, which is bad. So, yeah, that's what that is. But it's got nothing to do with encryption or hard drives. So the answer is and remains B, folks. Question 2. You have a laser printer which has some excess toner on the inside of it. Now, for those of you that don't know, toner is a powder-based ink which is specifically used by lasers. Now, which of the following can be used to remove this excess toner, which is in the form of powder? Can we go and use a dry cloth? Now, not the worst answer there if you look at the other answers there, but generally that's not really going to get the job done. You know, toner's still going to be all over the show, guys, so really not the best tool for the job. Answer B, a wet cloth. Now, yes, you might be able to get more ink to stick to the cloth, but, you know, a wet cloth, guys, and ink is not going to mix. This is powder ink, and you can imagine what's going to happen if it's going to get wet. It's just going to be ink all over the show. It's going to be one heck of a mess. So it's definitely not A or B. C, compressed air. Now, that might get the toner out, but something a lot of people don't know is toner is actually poisonous, guys. It won't necessarily unalive you, but, you know, it's really going to be bad for your health. You really don't want to get that into your eyes. Definitely don't want to breathe it in. So, and it's going to be all over the show. So once you go and use compressed air, that stuff's going to blow all over the place outside of the printer. And then once again, you've got yourself a mess. So, by process of elimination, the only answer that's left here, folks, is D. And yes, that is indeed the answer. It's not going to make a mess inside the printer. It's not going to make a mess outside the printer. And it's going to be safe. You're going to be able to get all of that toner. All right, let's move you guys along to question 3. When you replace the RAM inside a laptop, which of the following precautions should you follow? Now, I'm going to require you guys to choose 2 here. And the reason I'm doing that is because they will do the same principle in the exam. So in these videos of mine, I try and mimic the concept as much as I possibly can to get you guys ready for the exam. Most of the questions, yes, you'll have 4 possible answers, of which you can only choose 1. But ever so often, there will be questions where there might be more than 4 answers, and you'll possibly require to go and choose 2, 3, or they'll just say choose all that apply. So some advice I can give you guys here is, please read your questions carefully in the exam. Some of them will say choose 2. And if you just choose 1, yeah, you're going to get some marks, but you're also going to lose some marks, which could cost you the exam. So pay attention. Anyway, back to the question. So with regards to precautions to follow when we replace the RAM, is it to go and remove the TPM? No, guys, you cannot remove the TPM. It's an actual physical chip on the motherboard. It's not removable, and it's got nothing to do with the RAM. The TPM is used to store the encryption keys and do encryption and things like that. It's got nothing to do with RAM. Is it answer B? Follow the ESD procedures. Yes, that is one of the 2 answers we're looking for. Now, if you don't know or if you don't remember what ESD is, it stands for electrostatic discharge, and it basically in a nutshell comes down to the fact that the human body has got enough static electricity in it to blow circuit boards like your motherboard, like this RAM chip we're talking about, for example, a graphics card, a CPU. So if you go ahead and you just touch that RAM stick, guess what's going to happen? It's going to blow. So what you need to do is you need to go and follow the proper ESD procedures. In other words, you need to go and discharge yourself safely, and then you can go and touch that RAM chip. So that's one of the answers. Answer C, remove the CMOS battery. Now that's an actual coin cell battery on the motherboard. Once again, this has got nothing to do with the RAM. Removing the coin cell battery will make the BIOS forget its settings. It will forget the boot order, the time and the date. It's going to forget your BIOS password if you have one. Generally, for this to happen, though, it has to be removed for about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the motherboard. But, yeah, this has got nothing to do with the RAM, so it's not C, folks. Answer D, remove all power. Yes, that is the second answer we're looking for, guys. Safety always comes first. So if you're going to go and work on a desktop PC, a server, a printer, a whatever, you always turn it off first. You turn it off by the wall. You unplug it from the wall. And if this is, for example, a desktop PC, what you can also do is an extra precaution. You can also maybe go and flip that power switch at the back of the power supply. But as long as it's unplugged from the wall, I shall be happy. So remove all power because that's a safety concern. So there's 2 answers here. We can see that's B and D. Obviously, E is out. It says follow EMI procedures. Now, EMI is not something I made up. Sometimes the answers in these questions are just total fantasy stuff that I suck out of my thumb. But EMI is, in fact, a thing, guys. It stands for electromagnetic interference. And where you'll most commonly see this take place is with something like a network cable, the likes of a Cat5, a Cat6. So if you have, for example, a Cat5 or a Cat6 cable, a network cable, and you, for example, have a power cable lying parallel next to it, that power cable, guys, has got a very small magnetic field around it. And that is going to cause EMI to take place on your network cable. It's going to corrupt some of the data. It's going to make the cable unstable. So if you are browsing the internet, for example, yeah, you'll be able to load a page, but you'll see ever so often the page doesn't want to load. If you're copying large files over that cable, you're going to see that it's going to keep failing. It's going to keep dropping. It's just going to be very annoying. So generally, if it's a power cable, you want to keep that power cable at least 1 foot away from the network cable, depending on the amount of amps being drawn through it. There is other things that also cause EMI. Things, for example, like fluorescent lights, any heavy machinery that draws a lot of amps. So you get the idea. So yeah, definitely not EMI. The answers is B and D. Moving on to question 4. You have just completed a print head replacement. What do you need to do next? Now, guys, print head replacements is not something we do that often, but quite often, if you were to go and do that, you need to go and calibrate that printer. If you don't calibrate it, yeah, it'll print, but it's going to print skewed, it's going to be misaligned. You'll see the printer might print off the one edge of the paper, or it's going to be very much to the left or very much to the right, or it's just not going to look like it's right. Something's going to look wrong. So we need to do a calibration, and that, folks, is called alignment. So the answer is indeed C, but if we look at the other answers there, reinstalling the driver would have not have made any difference because the driver was 10-to-1 installed already. You just did a replacement of the print head. Then we've got lubrication. We don't normally lubricate things in a printer. And then if you look at the last one there, cleaning. What are you going to be cleaning after changing a print head? There's normally nothing to be cleaned. Moving on to question 5, boys and girls. You have a user that complains A certain printer in their office keeps jamming constantly. Now, folks, something I want to tell you here before we carry on with this question. If you have a printer where it keeps jamming repeatedly, it's almost always the rubber wheels. I'm not saying it will be, but it's almost always the rubber wheels. These are also sometimes referred to as the pickup roller. So that's going to be the answer for this question, but we'll get to that in just a second. You can think of this as the rubber tires on your car. In the beginning, when you've got a new set of tires, they have a lot of grip. But as time goes by, they get smoother and smoother to the point where, well, you've got no grip. And that vehicle's going to start slipping. Now, the rubber wheels inside your printers are the same. Now, not all printers use them, but if you go look at your laser printers and inkjet printers, which is predominantly what offices use, they work with rubber wheels. In the beginning, they will have a lot of grip. As time goes by, they get smoother. And that means the papers are going to start slipping. So on the left and the right in the printer, it might have some rubber wheels, and these are used to press down on a piece of paper to get it from point A to point B. And when this paper starts getting moved, you'll find that the one side might start slipping, and now the paper starts going in ever so slightly skew, and this will start causing a jam. Now, if you're going to go and print another page and another page, the rubber wheels will not suddenly have more grip. They will get smoother and smoother, and the jams will start becoming more and more frequent. So if you ever have a client or a user, or just maybe it's your own printer, where you've got a printer and it keeps jamming repeatedly, I can tell you now, it's almost always the rubber wheels. If we look at the rest of this question, which of the following is most likely the problem? If you look at these answer choices, what do you guys think? It's answer B, the pickup rollers, because they're made out of rubber wheels. So it's definitely not A, it's not a duplex assembly, it's not a transfer belt, it's not a fuser assembly. Fuser assemblies, yes, they can be problematic in some printers, but normally that takes a lot of time, and this is not a symptom of a fuser assembly. Normally, if a fuser has an issue, you'll see the print jobs will print, but you'll see all kinds of lines, black lines, white lines, black spots and streaks and things like that. Shadow images, which is also known as ghost images or clone images, the likes of that. Right, question 6. Which of the following connectors do not belong to copper network cables? So in other words, we are looking for connectors that belong to the likes of fiber cables. If it's a copper cable connector, then we should not choose that. If it's a non-copper cable connector, we need to choose it. So be very careful on how you read these questions in the exam. Sometimes one or two words can make the world of a difference. Now you'll notice once again, I want more than one answer from you guys. This time I'm not just saying choose 2 or choose 3. I'm saying choose all that apply. And I gave you even more answers to choose from. Why am I doing this? Because like I said earlier, I'm trying to get you guys used to this because you're going to get this kind of scenarios in the exam. Looking at the connectors that I've given you guys, the first one says ST. That, guys, is short for straight tip, which is a fiber cable connector. So that is indeed one of the ones we're looking for because fiber does not use copper. It uses glass and plastic, and it makes use of light like optical light or laser light. If we look at answer B, RJ11. These are used for telephone cables, also known as Cat3 or good old-fashioned POTS, which is short for plain old telephone system. You guys can just think of this as telephone cable. Now, telephone cable, guys, has copper in it, so that's definitely not an answer. Answer C, RJ45. Now, that is the connector we'll normally go and use on most Ethernet cables, the likes of Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a. All of them use the same connector, guys, which is this RJ45. Now, those cables, they're made out of what? Copper once again. So B and C is out. Looking at answer D, LC. That is short for lucent connector, which is also a fiber cable connector. So that's indeed one of the ones we're looking for. So 2 out of the 3 has been found. Looking at answer E, SC. That is short for subscriber connector, which is also a fiber cable connector. So we have indeed actually found our 3 answers. So there you go. The last one there, which is obviously wrong, B and C, is for coaxial. And that is a copper cable, which is not what we want. Now, guys, if you do get some sort of question in the exam, and I know there is some in the pool, where they ask you to choose all the fiber cable connectors, A trick you guys can go and use, and this only works in A+ exam, is simply just choose anything with 2 letters. Now, as you guys can see there, everything of 2 letters, purely by coincidence, turns out to be fiber. So if you need to go and choose all the fiber cable connectors in the A+ exam, that's what you can go and do. Just choose anything with 2 letters. They like to go and use the abbreviations. They normally don't list them with their full names. It's possible, but they don't normally do that. They normally just list these fiber cable connectors by their abbreviations. You can try this trick in the N+ exam as well, but unfortunately there is more than just 3 fiber cable connectors, and in the N+ exam they'll ask you about some of the other ones as well. So if you're going to go and try this stunt, you'll get 3 of them right, but you are going to miss some of them, of course, as well. Anyway, folks, moving you guys along to question 7. You have a user who can't connect to the internet. After checking their IP address, you notice they have an IP address of 169.254.16.45. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed, but that is called a pipa. And yes, I know I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but as long as you guys know what I mean. You spell it as A-P-I-P-A, and I call it a pipa. It basically means you don't have an IP address. So if you guys ever go onto a machine and you run the ipconfig command, or you go check the IP address via some sort of other way, if you see a 169.254, that means you've got this APIPA that I'm talking about. It basically means you don't have an IP. It only applies if your device is on dynamic. So if you've got a fixed IP address, it'll stay on that until you or somebody changes it one day. But if your device is set to dynamic, or as some of you guys might know it, automatic, and if it's unable to obtain an IP address for whatever reason, this could be because the cable is unplugged, maybe the Wi-Fi signal is too weak or too far away, could be that the DHCPs run out of IP addresses. Yes, that's a thing. Whatever the case might be, if you see a 169.254, specifically those first 2 octets, it means you don't have an IP address. Alright, so now that we know that means we don't have an IP address, the rest of the question says, which of the following commands should you run next to fix the user's internet? Now, I don't know how much you guys are paying attention here, but you might notice that I put a certain word there in capitals. That is normally to draw attention to the fact that there might be more than one answer, or it's to draw attention to the fact that there's maybe a little loophole here that you guys need to pay attention to. Be careful, because the same thing will happen in the exam. Certain words like the word most, or least, or next, or best, those kinds of words will often be marked in capital letters in the exam. Be careful when they do that. It's to draw attention to something. Alright, so now we know we've got an IP of 169.254. It means we don't have an IP address. Now, if we look at the commands down below, because this person is moaning they cannot connect to the internet, what command can we run next to fix their internet? Is it A, ipconfig flush DNS? No, guys, that's got nothing to do with this. It's got nothing to do with IP addresses. That is a DNS-related command. You probably would have been able to guess that if you looked at the part that it says DNS. It is used to flush your DNS cache. Think of this as your DNS short-term memory on your PC of what websites has been visited recently and that kind of stuff. So it's got nothing to do with this. Answer B. Now, that is an IP address related command, and it's normally used on dynamic IP addresses, which is what we're dealing with here. Now, what that command will normally do, folks, is if you have a dynamic IP from the DHCP which has expired, you can use that command to release that command back to the DHCP. And then normally after that command, you would see you've got a pipa. You'll have a 169.254 because you've just released your current valid IP address, which is now expired. Right after that command, you would normally have to run a second command, which is answer C there. It says renew. The second command is going to ask the DHCP for a new IP address. So both answer B and C has got to do with IP addresses. If we look at answer D, also somewhat to do with IP addresses, but answer D doesn't actually do anything. It just shows you information. So unlike the ipconfig command, it shows you basic network information about this specific device, the ipconfig/all will show you a lot more. We'll show the same information, but it'll also show you the MAC address, whether it's got a static IP or dynamic IP, that kinds of stuff. Looking at the question again, though, what kind of IP do we have there, guys? A pipa. It means we don't have one. So the answer here is C, to request a new IP. the user cannot connect to the internet because they don't have an IP address. Now, normally, if you attend an A+ course, your teacher will teach you to always run the release command first, followed by renew. And a lot of people make the mistake in the exam if they get a question like this, where they'll say the answer is release, because they think that is the first command they need to go and run, because normally it is. But that only applies if you have an IP address to actually release. Do we have one to release? No. It might look like one, but it is not one. It's basically a placeholder. So the answer is C, folks. Question 8. You have a user that installed a new wireless router in their home office. After installing it, remote users have lost the ability to access an FTP server in the user's home office. Now, an FTP server, guys, that's the FTP is short for File Transfer Protocol. It's a server of sorts which is used to store files and stuff, and you can access this over the network and over the internet. It's an old school way, actually, of storing files and sharing files, so we don't really use it that much these days. Now, it further states, which of the following need to be configured on the router for remote users to be able to access the FTP server again? Alright, so for this question to make sense, guys, think of your router as the reception in a very big building. Maybe it's my building. Maybe I've got lots of classrooms in my building. And in one of them, I'm teaching this A+ course. Now, if you've never been at my building before, where are you going to land? You're probably going to get to my building because you've got the address. You're going to get to reception, and from there, you don't quite know where you need to go. So what are you going to do? You're probably going to go and ask that person behind the reception desk and say, hey, where is the A+ class? I'm here for A+. And they will direct you accordingly. Now, that is basically what the router does, guys. It does something called port forwarding. Now, from the outside world, if something comes to your router, it uses your public IP address. So from the outside, if people need to access your home or whatever, they'll use your public IP address, and that's going to get them more or less to your router. From there, though, this digital traffic, which is basically you in that reception, the digital traffic doesn't exactly know where it needs to go in your home office. Maybe you've got lots of computers. So where exactly does that traffic need to go to get to the FTP server? It's the same as when you get to my building, you get to reception, so you've gotten up to there. That's the public IP address. But from there, you don't know where you need to go. So the receptionist will point you in the right direction. So you can think of the receptionist as a router. He, she, or they will tell you, okay, you need to go to classroom, blah, 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 and you're going to follow the instructions and you're going to get there. So that's a real life example of what's happening here. So since this user recently replaced their router, all of that settings that was on the previous one is now missing. You will have to go and set that up again. So if we look at the question here again, guys, it says, which of the following need to be configured on the router for remote users to be able to access the server again? Is it MAC filtering? No, I mean, you probably know the answer is C. MAC filter, guys, although very secure, it's used mainly for security. So if I don't want people to connect to my wireless network, for example, you can go and put a MAC filter. And if someone's MAC address is not in your filter, basically a whitelist or an allowed list, they will not be able to connect to your wireless network. It's used for that. It's got nothing to do with this particular question. Disabling the SSID. Although it's got to do with wireless, it's somewhat unrelated to this question. The SSID is how we identify our networks. And disabling the SSID will simply make your network undiscoverable. So it's very hard for hackers to hack a network if they don't know about its existence. They won't know about it because they can't see it. So if they do know about it, they can obviously still go and connect to it and hack it. But if you disable the SSID, they won't see it, which means they will hopefully not try and hack it. But it's got nothing to do with this FTP server and getting the traffic to where it needs to be. Port forwarding is, of course, our answer. If we look at answer D, QoS, that is short for quality of service. It's generally used to go and increase the quality of our network. And it's actually not just one thing, guys. It's a collection of things. Think of it as a toolbox of things. One of the things you'll find in this toolbox, as an example, would be something like bandwidth management to control how much bandwidth you want to dedicate to what kind of traffic in your network. But it's got nothing to do with how your traffic gets to where it needs to be. So the answer is and remains C. Question 9. You have a user that has a virtual machine which is running very slowly. The user would like to increase performance for the virtual machine. Which of the following can you go and upgrade which will have the biggest impact on this virtual machine's performance? Right, so guys, if you're going to go run a virtual machine, if you don't know what a virtual machine is, it's exactly like a real computer, except it doesn't have its own hardware, like RAM, CPU, hard drive, things like that. So if you are going to go run a virtual machine, since it doesn't have its own hardware, where do you think it's going to get that from? It gets it from the host on which it's running, the actual physical machine. So that means the host needs to have a lot of resources. It needs to be a very beefy machine in a sense of have a lot of RAM, a lot of hard drive space, big fast CPU, things like that. Now when it comes to a slow running virtual machine, what will have the biggest impact? Is it A, RAM? Yes, guys. The more RAM the host has, the more RAM you can go and allocate to the virtual machine, and the faster the virtual machine will be. Answer B is out because we don't need a video card for our virtual machines. It's out. That is normally used for video editing, and it's used for, well, playing games and things like that. Virtual machines need a lot of RAM, they need hard drive space, and preferably a fast CPU. So if they had CPU on this list, that could also potentially be an answer, but it's not. So it's RAM. If you look at answer C, a GPU, that's the same thing, guys. A video card, a GPU, and a graphics card are all one and the same. So I actually just listed the same answer twice to see if anybody's paying attention. And in answer D, cooling. Cooling's got nothing to do with virtual machines, guys. If the virtual machine is slow, it's most likely because of it not having enough resources. Question 10. You notice that one of your clients is using an unsecured wireless network. Which of the following can be configured to give them the best security? Now, out of the 4 answers I've given you guys, I'll be honest, all 4 of them are real answers. They're all real security you'll find on a network. But the first one, being port security, has actually got nothing to do with wireless. That is a security you'll use on networks, but this will be for wired networks. Not for wireless. It's used for wired networks, and it's normally something you'll do on a switch. So it's got nothing to do with this question. B, C, and D, all 3 of those have got to do with wireless networks, so that's in the right ballpark. And funny enough, all 3 of them has got to do with securing wireless networks, so that makes it even more difficult and even more interesting. Now, technically, folks, all 3 of those are correct, technically, because they actually technically all 3 do the exact same thing. If you want to know which one the answer is, well, that depends on which one gives the best security and the latest security. WEP, guys, is wireless encryption, but out of the ones listed, it is the oldest one out of the lot, which means it's the least secure out of the lot. But if you've got nothing else to choose, then that would obviously be, well, better than nothing. If you look at answer C, WPA, that came out after WEP. So when they released WEP, it didn't take hackers very long to, well, start hacking it and things like that. So they had to come up with something better, which was WPA. Was better, was newer, was obviously more secure. But once again, didn't take hackers very long to start compromising it. It is better than WEP, but, you know, hackers are compromising that one too. And thus, WPA2 was born. It is the latest and the most secure one out of those there. And believe it or not, that is actually what most companies are still using till this day at this moment. There is a newer one that came out afterwards. It's not listed here. It's called WPA3, but unfortunately, most infrastructure does not support it at this time. So if you go look at your equipment, you'll find that the latest you can go and choose in terms of wireless encryption is WPA2. Now, something important to note here, guys. WPA2 might be the answer right now because that is in fact the best security. It is in fact wireless and it is in fact encryption and all that. But if I were to take that answer away, let's imagine for a moment I remove the answer WPA2. Is there suddenly no answer? No, there's still an answer. Then you just choose the next one on the list, WPA, because that would suddenly become the most valid answer. And if that was not listed, then you would go and choose WEP. Yes, it's the weakest one out of the lot, but if you look at all the available answers, it's still the most secure out of what is available. So you have to look at it that way in the exam. Just be careful. Question 11. Which of the following devices would require the use of a punch-down tool? If you don't know what that tool is, guys, it's a tool that most technicians will go and use, and it's normally used on wall boxes, if you know what that is, or the back of patch panels. Now, wall box is normally something you'll find near someone's desk. Instead of bringing a network cable all the way from the server or all the way from the switch straight to a person's PC, instead of doing that, we will bring a cable as close as possible to the person's desk, and we will terminate it in what is known as a wall box. From that little wall boxy, they're normally white in most cases, from there you'll have a small short LAN cable going to the person's PC. That LAN cable is normally called a fly lead. Now, if or when the user eventually breaks that cable of theirs, and let me tell you they will, then at least you don't have to go and replace the whole freaking cable and take it out of the wall possibly or out of the ceiling. No, you just need to replace that small little piece, which is like 1 meter or 2 meters long. That's the only part you need to go and replace. Much easier, much quicker, much more efficient. Now, we use the punch down tool to get the network cable into that wall box to terminate it there. And the same for a patch panel, the back of a patch panel. If you don't have a punch down tool, you can actually go and use a very small flat screwdriver. Now, if we look at the available answers, on which of these devices would you need to go and use a punch down tool? Well, you know the answer now. It's not a repeater. A repeater can be for wireless or wired networks. It's to go and rebroadcast the network and get it further down the line. Patch panel. This is something you'll normally find in a network cabinet along a network switch. You'll normally have lots of little fly leads there. But the point right now is this is where you'll go and use the punch down tool. It's going to be behind that patch panel to get all your cables in the back of it. A PoE injector, that's normally a small little boxy which allows you to go and inject electricity into a network cable. So if you've got an appliance somewhere that needs to be powered up and there's no power source nearby, you can potentially go and use a PoE injector somewhere else down the line, and that's going to allow you to get power into that network cable. A switch, well, that's a network switch. That's normally used to go and connect various machines and devices together using network cables. All right, folks, let's move you on to question number 12 here. You have been tasked with installing a new client machine. You notice the machine is not getting any network connectivity. You test the network cable between the PC and the network jack and confirm that it's good. So that small little network cable that goes from the laptop or the desktop to the wall jack, that wall box, that is good. We normally call that a fly lead. So then you go to the network closet and you find several network cables are not connected to the switch. Which of the following tools would you use to determine which cable goes back to the network jack? Now, what's happening here, guys, is in the network closet or network cabinet, whatever you want to go and call it, there's many network cables normally coming together there. And in this case, there seems to be multiple ones that are not connected. Now, when it comes to tracing them, in other words, figuring out which one goes where, that can be problematic. So you cannot exactly just go and plug them in and plug them out because you can actually do a lot of harm like that. So you need to know absolutely with certainty which cable is which. Now, on the one end of the cable, the part that goes to the office, there you're going to go and hook something up to it. This is part of what is known as a toner probe. So I'm actually giving you guys the answer here. It's also known as a tone generator. It's a two-part tool. So on the cable itself, you're going to go and connect something to it, which basically sends a pulse or a tone into it. And then the second part of this tool basically looks like a little wand. If you hold the wand near this particular cable, which you've now plugged into this tool, it generates a tone. Hence the name, tone generator. It'll start beeping. It's almost like a radiation detector to a certain extent, except it's more of a beeping sound than a clicking sound, quite frankly. This is great if you want to go and trace a network cable through hollow walls, through the ceiling, or quite frankly, if you just have a lot of cables coming together in a network cabinet, for example, and you don't know which is which. Now, if you go back to that network cabinet and you hold this wand near the correct cable, it will start beeping. So it's used to identify which cable is which there, or just to trace a cable through walls and ceilings and stuff like that, guys. So there are the answers here. We know the answers. Answer B now, because I've kind of given it to you guys. If you look at answer A cable crimper. Now that is something we use with network cables, but that is what we use to go and get that RJ45 connector onto your network cable. Normally that connector will be loose. You get the 8 little wires in there, and then you're going to use this cable crimper to actually go and connect those wires to the crimper. A punch down tool, also used for network cables, except this is specifically used for wall boxes and patch panels, something we have explained earlier in this video. So if you've got a wall box, you need to go and terminate your network cable in there. Or if you want to go and connect this to the back of a patch panel, a punch down tool is what you'll go and use there. And then the last one, guys, is also got to do with network cables. All 4 of these have to do with network cables. The last one is something we use to go and test if a network cable is bad or good, and or if you have misconfigured it. So it normally works with 8 lights. You plug both ends in of the network cable, the same network cable, and ideally you want all 8 lights to come on, and you want them to come on in the correct order. So it'll show you if one of these wires perhaps moved out of place when you shoved them into that RJ45 connector just before you crimped it. And it will also show you if you perhaps accidentally damaged one of the 8 wires. So if all 8 lights come on, and if they come on in the correct order, then you know your cable is good. Anyway, so the answer is B, folks. Moving on to question 13 here. You have a user that works in a public kiosk, basically a little shop, where their laptop is susceptible to theft. The information on a laptop is not of concern. Normally that is of concern. So which of the following options can be used to secure the laptop? So what's being said here, guys, is I'm not concerned with the data on the laptop. So I'm not concerned about having strong digital security. I'm concerned about having strong physical security. I physically don't want people to steal my laptop. You'll find most security-related questions in the exam with regards to PCs, laptops, and things like that will be about digital security. So they generally don't care too much if the laptop gets stolen. They just don't want the data on that laptop to get into the wrong hands. And in a situation like that, you would normally go and use something like encryption. Now, in this case, we're not concerned about the data. We're concerned about the laptop physically being stolen. Which one of these 4 options that I've got below for you guys will physically prevent someone from stealing that laptop? Is it A, data encryption? No. That is something that's great. I mean, you definitely want that, but it'll only prevent people from getting their hands on the data on the laptop, but it does not physically stop them from stealing it in the first place. If you look at answer B here, use a strong password. That's also a digital or a logical form of security, which is meant to keep people off the laptop, but it does not prevent them from stealing the actual laptop. If you look at answer C, use a cable lock. Yes, folks, that is the answer. Now, with laptops, you get a cable lock. It does not work on all laptops, but on a lot of laptops these days, you get a cable lock. At first glance, it actually looks honestly like a bicycle chain. You hook it up to your laptop. Sometimes it slides into a special port. I've seen on some of the newer laptops, it actually slides into one of your USB-C ports, and it locks into place in that port. You cannot get that chain out of there. And then this allows you to actually go and tie this chain to something like a table or something. And that'll hopefully prevent people from just stealing their laptop or just picking it up and going. So that is the answer. Looking at answer D, which is obviously incorrect, that is once again a digital form of security. Although great, but it does not physically prevent people from stealing something. So the answer is and remains C. Question 14, folks. One of your users report that their company laptop cannot pick up a wireless connection in certain areas of the building. Okay, so it sounds like they can pick it up, but in certain areas of the building, it does not work. However, users working on their laptops in common areas have internet connectivity. Okay, which of the following is the most likely the cause? Is it answer A, weak radio frequency signals? That's what RF stands for, by the way. So far, that is the answer. Well, I can probably go ahead and just tell you guys that actually is the answer. If you look at answer B, duplicate IP addresses. Now, if your device has a duplicate IP address, let's say it's got the same IP as another device on the network, it will kick your device off the network as well as the other device. You will not have internet at all. It does not matter if this is on a wired connection or a wireless connection. You will not have internet, period. Now, in this question, you can see that it does say that you do have connectivity. It's just in certain parts of the building and other parts of the building it doesn't work. So if it was an IP address, it'll be permanently off, just dead. So it's not B. Answer C, out-of-date Ethernet driver. Now, guys, first of all, that is extremely unlikely. That almost never ever happens, and that almost never has this kind of influence. But hypothetically, if this PC had an out-of-date Ethernet driver, why does it work in certain parts of the building and other parts not? If it was a driver issue, then once again, it would not work at all, period. But the question specifically says that the laptop does pick up the connection in certain areas of the building and other parts it does not. So that kind of rules that one out. The last one there, folks, it says enabled MAC filtering. Now, that is a filter which is used to physically look at devices physical address, or as they call it, MAC address. And it works with an allowed list and a not so allowed list. So a white list and a black list, if you will. So if you allow certain devices to connect to your network, let's say a wireless network, you would add their MAC addresses to your filter. And if you don't want certain devices to connect, then you just do nothing. Normally they'll be blocked. So it's a matter of everything else will be blocked, and the devices that are allowed, you go and add them in the allowed list. Now, if there was a MAC filter, you would once again be blocked everywhere, period. It's not going to be a matter of, okay, here you can connect and there you cannot connect. No, it'll be off everywhere. So B, C, and D would have caused an issue everywhere, not just certain parts of the building. So because the process of elimination, once again, the answer is, of course, A. But that is also the symptoms of a weak signal, if you guys think about it. So certain parts of office buildings will have strong wireless signal. Certain parts will have weak wireless signal. So if you go into an area where you've got a strong wireless signal, obviously your laptop will go and connect. If you go to a weak signal, it'll struggle or it'll just disconnect. That is why some of the other laptops in common areas have internet connectivity, because it's a common area, so there's most likely an access point nearby. That is why. Anyway, let's move you guys along to question 15 here. You are struggling to communicate with one specific IP address, and you need to narrow down where the traffic is actually stopping. So you want to kind of figure out where the issue might be. Is there something in between, perhaps, that's causing the shenanigans? Which of the following commands would be used to determine this? So to determine where the issue might be. Is it answer A, ping? Now guys, all 4 of these are command prompt commands, just FYI. Now ping is a command prompt command, but it's used to test connectivity. It does not tell you where a connection issue might be, no. But it can test connectivity. So if you have set up your IP address and everything has been hooked up and all that, a ping command is used to test connectivity to a remote device. It sends 4 packets of data, very, very small, and if all your configurations and everything is correct, all 4 of them will reply. So you want to see 4 replies, and we don't just want to see 4 replies, we also want to see that they reply very, very quickly. So it's going to show you how fast these replies are coming through. So it's used to test your configuration and to see if there's connectivity. It does not tell you where a problem might be if there is one. If we look at answer B, it doesn't actually do anything. All it does is it just shows you information. If you go type ipconfig into command prompt, so in other words CMD, it shows you a device's basic network configuration. So it'll show you that device's IP address, its subnet mask, and its default gateway. That's the kind of stuff you will see with ipconfig. If we look at answer C, trace it. Guys, that will trace traffic up to 30 hops. Each hop is normally a router. Well, at least for the most part will be a router. But some of these hops can potentially be a firewall. Now, that is in fact the answer, by the way. So trace it is a command. You'll go and type into command prompt, followed by space, followed by the IP address or the name of the destination that you're trying to trace. So if I want to trace to Google or trace a certain device, it's going to trace the path that traffic takes to get to its destination, up to a maximum of 30 hops. Now, normally it won't go that far. It'll probably go up to like 10 hops in most cases. And then you can go and check. If one of those hops takes very long to respond or just doesn't respond at all, then you know, aha, that is where the issue is. So this will actually allow you to see if the problem is in-house. So if it's at the first hop or the second hop, it might potentially be in-house. If it's at the second or the third hop, it could potentially be at your ISP. And if it's at the 4th hop or beyond, then it's normally beyond your ISP. So you can actually very accurately determine where the problem might be and whose responsibility it might be. As to the last one, which we now know is incorrect, nslookup, guys, is a command we use with DNS. So it shows you DNS related information and stuff like that, but it doesn't actually do anything like the ipconfig command that actually just shows you information once again. Alright, let's move you guys to number 16 here. Which of the following connectors carries both digital video as well as audio? So what I want to know, these are the connectors that you would go and connect to a cable. So when it comes to cables, specifically the connectors now in this case, which ones of these is able to carry both video and audio signals? Is it VGA? No, guys, that's the blue connector that we use specifically for old school legacy video, which is actually still very widely used nowadays. So that is old school. It's that blue little connector. It's got 15 pins inside of it. It's legacy. It's used specifically for video, and it's analog. If we look at answer B, also a legacy cable, That is digital video, where VGA is analog video. Now, DVI is also more or less extinct, and it also just carries video signal. If we look at answer C, S-video, now that is a very old one. I think that is actually even older than VGA and DVI. So S-video is normally a yellow little port or a yellow little connector. Looks almost like an audio jack, to be frank. You actually get audio jacks that's the exact same shape and size and all that. So S-video, guys, also carries just a video signal. So because of process of elimination here, once again, the only answer that's actually left here is HDMI. And that is correct, guys. HDMI, as well as DisplayPort, mind you, both HDMI and DisplayPort are connectors and cables that are able to carry both video and audio signal. And if you get any question exam, guys, related to having both audio and video, that is normally going to be an HDMI or DisplayPort connector or HDMI DisplayPort cable. Those two are the only ones that are able to carry both video and audio on the same cable and on the same connector. They normally won't give you both because obviously both of them are correct. It'll normally give you the one or the other. Alright, question 17, folks. Which of the following ports is used for sending emails? Specifically sending, not receiving, eh? So if you look at answer A there, I've got port 21 there for you guys. That is used for FTP, File Transfer Protocol. So that's for file service and stuff like that. It's got nothing to do with email. If we look at port 22, that is used for SSH, but it's also used for SFTP. SFTP is just a secure version of a file transfer protocol, and SSH is a secure encrypted version of remote connecting to something via console view and things like that. Port 23 is Telnet, which is pretty much the same thing as SSH. Telnet is just an older technology which is in clear text and obviously not encrypted. So SSH is the more secure version. If we look at port 25, that is SMTP, which is specifically sending email. Now if you guys are paying attention, you would know that that is the answer here, folks. D, port 25, is SMTP, and that's the old school way of sending email specifically. So that's the answer. Answer E, 53, is DNS. That is used to convert IPs to names and names to IPs. It's a server we use to go and browse the web and things like that. So it's a server that is used when you do browsing on the web. So if you go type in facebook.com, for example, in your browser, your PC doesn't know what that is. So it'll go and contact the DNS, and the DNS will give your machine the IP address for the site you're trying to visit, and that is something your machine can actually understand. Answer F, 80. That is HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is normal clear text web browsing, guys. Normal web browsing. Now, all of these ports that I've given you guys are part of what is known as well-known port numbers, also referred to as common port numbers. You absolutely need to know your well-known port numbers, guys, or as they call it, common port numbers. The ones I've got listed here are not all of the well-known port numbers. There's about probably between 20 and 40 of them. So you'd be wise to go and memorize all of these port numbers and know what they are for. So if I give you port 23, you should know that it's Telnet. But not just that, you need to know what Telnet is actually used for. If I give you port 80, you need to be able to tell me that that is HTTP, but also that it's used for normal web browsing and that it's unencrypted and that it uses clear text. So that is the degree to which what you need to notice. Right, question 18. One of your users report their PC does not want to start and that they smell something burning. Now that is never good. Which of the following tools will best help you identify the problem? Now answer A there, cable tester. Guys, that is something we use with network cables. It's got nothing to do with a PC. We use that on a network cable, normally a LAN cable, to check if the cable is dead or if you've misconfigured one of those 8 little wires. It's got nothing to do with a PC that does not want to start. Answer B, a toner probe, which is also known as a tone generator, something we discussed earlier. And if you paid attention earlier in this video, you would know this is used to trace a network cable. Once again, it's got nothing to do with a PC. It is used to trace a cable to see which is which or where does it go in the walls or the ceiling and stuff. So it's definitely not A or B. Answer C, a PSU tester. Now PSU is short for power supply tester, and that is indeed the answer here, guys. Usually, if a PC does not want to start, especially if you smell something burning, it's almost always the power supply. I'm not saying it will be, And even if it is, it's not necessarily just the power supply, but usually in most cases, it's the power supply and probably only the power supply. Now, there is multiple ways to go and test this. I mean, for one, you can just go and disconnect the suspected power supply, and then just go and connect another power supply that you know for a fact is working, and then just check if the PC starts. If it does, then you know, aha, power supply is the issue. But, you know, you can also go and use a power supply tester. If you actually have one, you plug it directly into the power supply, and it'll show you if the power supply is faulty or not. Unfortunately, most technicians don't have these fancy tools, but if you are lucky enough to have one, well, go and use it. The last answer we now obviously know is incorrect. It says ESD strap. ESD being short for electrostatic discharge strap. This is also known as an anti-static wrist strap, by the way. So whenever we work with circuit boards like motherboards, RAM chips, graphics cards, CPUs, and things like that, you should preferably wear an anti-static wrist strap. It says wrist strap, but you can actually put it around your ankle as well, as long as it's just somewhere on your body. The other part of this wrist strap has a little bit of an alligator clip, which you can go and clip onto something grounded, something like a metal table. It doesn't help you clip it onto a table, but it's a wooden table. That does not ground you guys. So you clip it onto something that is grounded. And you also preferably need to have a rubber mat underneath your feet and underneath the PC. At least that is according to CompTIA. Question 19. One of your users wants to give internet access to a mobile device that does not have it using their own smartphone. Alright, okay. So which of the following connection types can be used? Now, normally when we say, let's give somebody internet access via our phone, what comes to mind is a hotspot. Now, do we see the answer hotspot here? No, we do not. So, is there another way to do it? Yes, there is. On most phones, there actually is, guys. So, just a quick recap. A hotspot is if you go onto something like your phone, and you basically go and broadcast your own network. So you probably have an internet connection on your phone due to your SIM card on there. You're getting this from your cellular network or your mobile provider. You're getting it from them, and you're broadcasting that network in a close proximity to any nearby devices. So if you've got a laptop nearby, or other people have got a laptop or a phone nearby and they don't have internet access, they can piggyback off your little hotspot that you're making there for them. So the benefit is you're giving internet to other devices. Downside is they will be using your data on your device. Now, obviously, we don't have hotspot as an answer here, so is there another way we can share the internet on a smartphone with something like a laptop or another mobile device? Yes, there is. Answer A says Bluetooth. It's right, but it's also wrong. I'm going to say wrong, and you'll see in just a second why. Answer B is tethering, and that is indeed the answer. Now, tethering is not just one thing, guys. Tethering consists of two methods that can be used. One of which is Bluetooth. Now, if I just say Bluetooth, that does not necessarily mean you're going to get internet access. That could just be me connecting my smartphone to your smartphone via Bluetooth, and then we can go and share files. It does not necessarily mean you're going to get internet, which is why I said yes and no. If I say tethering, and then I say Bluetooth, yes, I'm going to be giving you internet via Bluetooth then. That is called tethering. So it's not a matter of, hey, let's go onto my phone, let's just turn Bluetooth on. No. You will have to go into something called tethering on your phone. Instead of going into a hotspot, you will go into something on your phone called tethering. And you'll find on most phones they've got two options. One is Bluetooth, the other is USB. Now, I don't recommend tethering, although this is possible to share internet like this. In real life, guys, it is stupid slow. I mean, why would you want to go and share internet from your device to another via Bluetooth? That is really, really slow. You'll be much better off just using a hotspot, realistically. I know that's not an answer here. So this question is just to test if you understand that tethering can be used. And they will do the same kind of nonsense in the exam. But realistically, in real life, you'll be better off just making a hotspot. It's easier, it's quicker, it's more efficient. The other option of tethering, you can go and use USB. So I can plug a USB-C into my phone or whatever port your phone has. And then the other end will be plugged into your laptop or desktop or whatever. And you can go and share your connection like that. It is possible. So yes, the answer is B. Fiber, no guys, that's just the type of cable you get. Could be used for internet, but that's normally to provide internet to your home. It does not provide wireless internet necessarily. IR is infrared. Now that is used to, well, mostly share data between phones and stuff. It does not really allow us to go and share our internet connection, so that's not really feasible. Question 20. You have a client who wants their users to be able to come into the office with their laptops and connect to the office LAN, have dual screens, and charge batteries. Which of the following will allow your users to achieve this? So basically, you want users to be able to do all of that stuff in one go. Just wham, bam, boom. They can do all of that stuff. Now, which of the following here below will allow them to achieve that? I'm going to be straight with you guys. The answer is a docking station. But this has somewhat changed over the years. I actually want to use the word mutate. Back in the day, many, many decades ago, you would have a port below your laptop or the back of your laptop, a special slot, if you will. And when a user gets to the office, they would slide that laptop into an actual docking station which connects to that port. That would then give that person an external computer monitor, which is bigger and better, an external keyboard and a mouse. And of course, this will charge their battery and do all of the stuff that is listed here. Now, that's the old school way of doing that. Nobody does that anymore. Instead, these days, the new modern docking stations has one little cable there that users has one cable there that your user has to go and plug in. Instead of plugging in many cables, one for the mouse, one for the keyboard, one for the screen, one for the LAN cable, one for the charger, that's like 5, 6, 7 different kind of cables. Instead of plugging all those cables in, the user would have to plug in literally just one cable. They get to the office, take out their work laptop, plug in one cable, and voila, it automatically connects them to everything I've listed: a keyboard, a mouse, a screen, everything. So it's a little bit of a docking station. Out of this docking station, you'll have one wire coming out of it, which is the part you connect to your PC, and then all the other equipment I've just mentioned will be connected to the docking station. So I suppose this is for lazy people. I mean, how long does it take you to go and plug 5 wires in? Guys, it doesn't take that long. Same when it comes to unplugging them. It really just takes a couple of seconds. So you must be really freaking lazy if you want to go and use a docking station, in my opinion. Riser cards, which we now know is incorrect because we know the answer is docking stations. This is basically like an expansion card of sorts. So if you want to go and plug in, let's say, additional PCI cards or graphics cards or something like that into your PC and you just don't have room, you don't have space, a riser card is something you'll plug into, let's say, a PCI slot as an example. And in a riser card, you'll have 1 or 2 other slots, which allows you to plug in more cards. So it is an expansion card of sorts, but it's more to give you more room to work with, honestly. And then digitizer, guys, that is something we use with touch screens. If your phone, your tablet, or your laptop has a touch screen, that touch screen is actually multiple layers. It's not a screen. It consists of layers and layers. The outermost layer, ignoring the fact that you might have a screen protector, the outermost layer, guys, is the layer that senses touch from the user. That layer is called the digitizer. So if a user says, I'm touching my screen, but it does not detect the input, but as soon as I plug in an external mouse or keyboard or whatever into my mobile phone or tablet, it works. That tells us the screen is not detecting touch, and that tells us the digitizer is the issue. The last answer there, folks, adapter cables. These could be cables, but sometimes it's just a small little device that fits in the palm of your hand. It converts one kind of cable to a different kind of cable. Often used for video, but it's also used for other things. So you can, for example, use this to convert a VGA port to DVI. You can use this to convert DVI to HDMI, VGA to HDMI, or whatever. Convert pretty much any port to any other port. So if you don't have the right port, you can use these adapter cables or little adapters in general to convert one thing to another. Alright, folks, and then before we move on to question number 21, if you're looking for more practical-based questions, which we call PBQs for short, some people call these simulations. So if you're looking for examples of that, of what you guys can potentially encounter in the exam, I cover that on my Patreon. The link for that's in the video description down below. It's also on the screen, but that's not clickable. Now, on my Patreon, I don't just cover the PBQs for A+ Core 1. I also cover Core 2, Network Plus, Security Plus, CISA Plus, you name it. All of those PBQs get covered on my Patreon. And once you become a member, you automatically have access to all of those, just FYI. If you're looking for the actual course, that you can also find on my YouTube. I cover the full complete A+ course, as well as N+ and Security Plus. All of those are also on my YouTube channel, so just go check that out as well. Alright, on to question number 21. You need to physically secure your laptop while in a hotel room. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Similar to an earlier question we have, don't you guys think? Which of the following can you use for this purpose? So we're looking for security, guys. And normally when we talk about laptops and security, we think, encryption, because what if someone steals our laptop and what if they get their hands on our data? But here you guys will see I specifically said you need physical security. So we're more concerned about people physically stealing that laptop. So when it comes to physically securing your laptop, if we look at answer A, BitLocker drive encryption. Now that is generally something you should do with your laptop if you've got sensitive company information on there, but it does not actually stop a perpetrator from stealing the laptop. They can still very easily steal it. It's just if they do eventually steal it, they just won't get anything because the hard drive is encrypted. But it does not prevent them from stealing the laptop. If we look at B, multi-factor authentication. Also another form of digital security. So that's to keep people off the laptop, but it does not prevent them from stealing said laptop. If we look at answer C, biometric fingerprint scanner. That's kind of a physical security. It is, but it's not. It's more logical than physical. So the only thing that's physical is the fact that it scans something physical, but it's actually more of a logical kind of security. It does not prevent someone from stealing the laptop. It just prevents them from, well, getting onto the laptop. That's all it does. So out of all of these answers, we have not covered D yet, but because of process of elimination, we know it's D. And also, if you paid attention in an earlier question, you would know the answer is D. So a cable lock, guys, is a physical form of security. It is something quite commonly used with laptops, and it basically looks like a bicycle chain, if I'm being honest. So some laptops support this, some don't. And if it does support your laptop, some laptops have got a special port for it. Other laptops, you just kind of shove it into the USB-C port. If you've got a USB-C port, it locks into that port. And the only way they can get it out is to kind of like break it out. And that kind of renders the laptop useless, don't you think? So, yeah, the answer is D, folks. Question 22. Which of the following wireless standards can operate at both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz? And you'll see, I want more than one answer from you guys. In fact, I just said choose all that apply. So if I say it like that, and this does apply in the exam too, guys, it could mean that all of these answers I've given you are correct. It could mean that none of them are correct, or any random amount could be correct. We don't know. Now, when you get a question like this in the exam, guys, and I can tell you there will be, when they will ask you about wireless and things like that, please pay very close attention to what they say this needs to support. Should the wireless standard support both 2.4 and 5? Should it support just 2.4, just 5? Or should it support 2.4 in general? So if they just ask, which of the following wireless standards supports 2.4? Well, there are some of them that supports 2.4, but it only supports that. And some of them support that and something else. If they just say, which of the following supports 2.4? Well, that obviously expands the net. But if I ask you, which of the following supports only 2.4? Well, that massively narrows the list now, doesn't it? Some of them do support 2.4, but they also support 5 gigahertz. So that would basically eliminate that because it doesn't just support 2.4. So be very careful on how exactly they phrase that sentence in the exam. Read it slowly, read it carefully, and make sure you understand exactly what it requires from you. So at the moment, this particular question that I've sucked out of my thumb, it says, which of the following wireless standards can operate at both 2.4 and 5? Now, if we look at answer A there, guys, the 802.11a standard, that standard, folks, only operates at 5 gigahertz. So that completely eliminates that one. The second one there, 802.11b, operates only at 2.4. So that one's also eliminated. The third one, 802.11g, only operates at 2.4. So that's also eliminated. Answer D, 802.11n. It operates at both 2.4 and 5. So that's one of the possible answers. So that one is so far correct. Answer E, 802.11ac. It only operates at 5 gigahertz. So that one is eliminated. That's not an answer. So now we don't know. Is it just D or is it D and F? F, folks, 802.11ax operates at both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So that's also a correct answer. So out of all of these answers, both D and F is correct. Now, is that all the wireless standards we get? No. I mean, for example, you get a very brand spanking new one, which is 802.11be, and that one operates at 2.4, 5, and believe it or not, 6 gigahertz. So, a little food for thought there, folks. Moving on to question 23. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't have a grounding strap available. So those are also known as an anti-static wrist strap. You can also ground yourself by touching which of the following. Now, first of all, guys, why do we ground ourselves? Let me put it that way. So when we ground ourselves, that would be to go and use something like an anti-static wrist strap. Why? Because the human body has got enough static electricity in it to blow circuit boards like the RAM, like the CPU, like the motherboard, like the graphics card. Now, after what I've just said, look at the answers down below. If I touch the RAM, would that be a good way to go and ground yourself? No. Touching the RAM would in fact blow the RAM chip, so you definitely don't want to do that. Answer B, the CPU fan. Now, the CPU fan probably won't do anything. You're not going to discharge yourself, but you're also not going to blow anything. Just don't touch the CPU itself, because that will blow the CPU. But touching the fan of the CPU, no. That's not going to do anything. It's often made out of plastic. Answer C, the power supply. Yes, folks, that is the correct answer. If you can touch the power supply, if it's within reach, that would in fact ground you. It will safely discharge you, and you're not going to blow anything inside the computer case. Answer D is a circuit board. That is the main circuit board in your computer, and touching that would actually in fact blow it. So you definitely don't want to do that until you're actually grounded. So the answer is and remains C. Question 24. A user reports that they have a video projector, but that everything is colored blue. Okay, so it's working, but it's very blue, the image. Which of the following is causing the issue that is actually being experienced here right now? Is the lamp failing? Now, projectors do have lamps, guys, and yes, they do fail. But normally when a lamp fails, the symptoms you will experience is most of them will display a little message, like for months and months, a very annoying message when you turn them on, that says the lamp is about to fail, or the lamp needs to be replaced. And they'll keep displaying that for months and months. Even if you use the projector every day, generally the lamp will still last for months and months after that. So every time as you turn it on, for the first couple of minutes, you'll see a very annoying message on the screen that says, well, lamp needs to be replaced. Other symptoms you'll see if a lamp needs to be replaced is the image will start blurring ever so slightly. It's not going to be as crispy clear as it was in the beginning. So that is the symptoms of a failing lamp. And it's showing very blue. That's got nothing to do with the lamp failing. Answer B, there are dead pixels. No, guys, a projector does not have pixels. It uses a lamp and it's light that shines. Pixels is something you'll find in an actual computer screen. Projectors don't have any pixels. So since they don't have any pixels, they don't use any pixels, it's physically impossible to have any dead pixels. So no, not answer B. Answer C, the resolution is incorrect. No, guys, the resolution is basically how zoomed in the image is, how zoomed out the image is, or what the aspect ratio is, how wide it is, or how square it is, things like that. It will absolutely not cause the color to be blue. Now, since we kind of eliminated the first three answers there, we now know the answer is D, a VGA connection. Now, specifically VGA connections, guys, they are very well known to cause this. Sometimes you'll see the image is very blue, very red, very green or yellowish. It works with three main colors. And sometimes if the wire is damaged, the connector is damaged, or one of those 15 pins in the VGA connection is damaged, then the image will often be very blue, very red, or very green, something along those lines. It mixes those colors to get all the other colors of the rainbow. So if you start seeing a lot of one color, then it means one of the other colors is potentially damaged or not coming through properly. Now you might find that nothing is broken. The cable might just be a bit loose. So very often, if you just jiggle the VGA cable, you'll find that the image will actually correct itself. So there might be nothing wrong, it's just a bit loose. So try that first, check if the cable is not loose. Make sure it's connected properly everywhere. And if you try that, and it still doesn't work, change the VGA cable. If that doesn't work, then there's potential that maybe the graphics card is damaged or the port on the projector might be damaged. But it's most likely the actual cable, guys. Question 25. Which of the following cable types is rated at a maximum of 100 megabits per second? So that is the maximum speed that particular cable can go. If you look at the cables I've got listed for you guys down below, Cat 5 can go a maximum of 100 megabits per second. So oopsie daisy, that is in fact the answer. So there you go. Now looking at answer B, Cat 5e can go a maximum of 1000 megabits per second, or 1 gigabit per second, as some might say. Cat 6 will go a maximum of 1000 megabits as well, or 1 gigabits as well. Cat 6A will go a maximum of 10 gigabits per second, or 10,000 megabits per second. So there you go, guys. Alright, question 26. Which of the following port numbers is used for remote desktop? Now, the first thing I want to point out here regarding these port numbers I've got listed for you, those are part of the well-known port numbers I spoke of earlier, also known as common port numbers. I told you guys earlier there's about 20 to 40 of them, and you need to know them all off by heart. In the exam, they won't just ask you random port numbers, guys. They will specifically ask you about port numbers, which is from that group of well-known port numbers. So make sure you know them all, because there will be questions about them. Which ones? We don't know. So it's best to prepare for them all. Now, looking at answer A, that is a port number I did in fact list for you guys earlier. That is for Telnet. It is to go and do remote connection, but that is in console view. It is not in a graphical view, and unfortunately this is a clear text form of remote connection, so it's very unsecure. It is not used for remote desktop. Port 110 is used for POP3. That is the old school way of receiving email. So it's specifically to receive email. It's the old school way of doing that, but nowadays there's many other ways to receive email. I mean, if you look at the likes of 365, Outlook, Gmail, they all have their own respective port numbers. But 110 is POP3, and that is a very old school way of receiving email. Port 3389 is used for something called RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. And one of the things you'll find under this umbrella of Remote Desktop Protocol is good old-fashioned remote desktop. So there you guys go. There's your answer. And then answer D, port 8080 is used for HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is normal clear text web browsing. Now, normal web browsing normally uses port 80. That is in fact the main port number. Port 8080 is an alternative port number. And on port 443 would be the encrypted version of web browsing, just in case you guys forgot. Alright, moving on to question 27 here. One of your users complained that their printer is not printing, and that it's giving an error message which says they need to replace filament. Now, what the cheese is that? What kind of printer is this user using if it's asking for the user to replace filament? Is it A? Now, basically what I'm testing here, guys, and they will do the same kind of nonsense in the exam, I want to check if you guys know what each printer uses to print. So some of them will use a powder-based kind of ink, some will use a liquid kind of ink, some will use more of a carbon paper kind of ink, some uses like a special kind of plastic to print or a wax to print. So you need to know what each printer uses to print, guys. You need to know that for the exam. If you look at answer A, a dot matrix printer, that is a very old printer, a legacy printer, but you still do find them here and there in some places. It uses something called a ribbon. It's a special kind of carbon paper, so you might find this on some invoice books and things like that. So how this works is it's got a bunch of pins inside which basically strike a piece of carbon paper, and that impression gets copied onto another piece of paper, which is why the ink always looks like it's, well, finished, like it's faded and things like that. So it uses ribbon, carbon paper. An inkjet printer uses liquid ink in its cartridges. A laser printer uses a powder-based kind of ink, which we call toner. A 3D printer uses a special kind of plastic to print, which we call filament. So there we go. If your printer is asking you to replace the filament, it's a 3D printer because its filament is finished, which is a special kind of plastic that it uses to print those, well, 3D objects. And then the last one, which we now know is not the answer, a thermal printer, guys, uses a wax-based kind of ink to print. Question 28. When you need to prevent toxic smoke and the spread of fire, which of the following types of cables should you go and use? Now, looking at all of these, I basically want to know from you guys which one of these cables does not give off toxic smoke and which of them are basically fire resistant. Now, if you paid attention in your A+ course or if you studied your manual, you would know the answer here, guys, is plenum. Plenum does not give off toxic gas, and it also is fire resistant. So fiber, we know what kind of cable it is, coaxial and shielded twisted pair. These are all leaded cables, but plenum is specifically used in environments where we want to prevent toxic smoke and the spread of fire. Moving on to question 29. You need to access the command line interface of a router securely. So we don't just want to access the command line interface, that's one part of the question, but we also want to do this securely. Always make sure you read the question slowly and properly, otherwise you can end up missing something. Now further, my question states, which of the following protocols should you use? Is it Telnet? Now that's a yes and no. If my question just said you need to access the command line interface of a router, then it could potentially be Telnet, because Telnet does actually allow you to go and do that. But Telnet does that in what is known as clear text. That means it's unsecured. My question specifically says securely. We need to do what Telnet does, but we need to do it securely. So obviously that now eliminates Telnet. So Telnet's just half correct. Answer B, SSH. Yes, folks, that is the answer. SSH is essentially the same as Telnet, except the difference here is SSH does what Telnet does, except it does it in an encrypted manner. So SSH can also access that router via command line, but it will do it in an encrypted manner, which means it is secure. So that's the answer. SFTP is also encrypted, but that's the encrypted version of FTP, which is, file transfer protocol to transfer files. So it's a file server which is encrypted, or it's a secure way of accessing a file server. And in answer D, HTTPS is also encrypted, but that's encrypted web browsing. I purposely added SFTP here and HTTPS because both of those are also encrypted, but it's got nothing to do with remote connect. And then I also purposely added Telnet here because that is a remote connect, but it's not encrypted. So you can see how my train of thought kind of worked here. I'm trying to throw you guys off your game here to see if you guys actually pay attention and if you actually understand this. Question 30. You have been called to a classroom to troubleshoot a display projector that occasionally powers off. So it works, but it now and then will go and turn itself off. You try to recreate the issue and notice that the projector will not power back on until approximately 15 minutes have passed. After 15 minutes of being powered on, the projector just, shuts off again. So it does work, but then ever so often it'll turn off, and then it has to be off for about 15 minutes before it'll allow you to turn it back on again, or before anything happens. And after running for about more or less 15 minutes, it just turns itself back off again. What could that be? Which of the following should you do to resolve this issue? Should you replace the bulb? No, guys. If the bulb is about to fail, like I said in an earlier question, it normally displays a message, a very annoying message that says you need to replace the bulb. And you'll notice the image will start being a little blurry. But that's about it. And then one day, if you leave it long enough, the projector just won't turn on at all. It's just because the bulb is now blown. Answer B. Adjust the standby timeout. Now, standby timeout, guys, only kicks in if the projector is inactive. Now, guys, nowhere in my question did I mention the projector was inactive, but even if we assume the projector was inactive for 15 minutes, maybe this timeout period is set to 15 minutes, that could theoretically explain half of the issue. So if it turned off after 15 minutes, we could argue and say, okay, maybe the timeout is set to 15 minutes. But why then does it not want to turn back on for a whole 15 minutes? Why does 15 minutes also have to pass before it allows you to turn it back on? Timeout does not do that. If there was a timeout of some kind configured, and if it was hypothetically 15 minutes, then that still does not explain why this projector refuses to turn on for 15 minutes. So it's not B. Answer C. Clean the filter. Yes, folks. As silly as that might sound, if you go check on most projectors, if not all of them, they've got a filter on the side of it. And if you turn that projector on, you'll hear that projector normally makes a loud noise. It's a fan running inside of it. Why? To cool it down. A projector gets very, very hot, guys. So that filter is to prevent dust from going inside. It's got a fan in there, and because that fan is blowing constantly, dust is bound to get in there. So the filter is meant to keep the dust out. But, of course, eventually that filter will get clogged with dust. Now, if it gets clogged with dust, then obviously the fan is not going to be able to suck in any cool air anymore. And if that happens, the projector is going to get too hot. When a projector gets too hot, it shuts down automatically to prevent any damage. That is why it does not want to turn on for a whole 15 minutes, because the projector is still cooling down, and after about 15 minutes more or less, then the projector most likely would have cooled down enough for it to allow you to turn the projector back on again. It's got safety sensors built in. They sense the temperature. If the temperature gets too hot, projector shuts down. And if the projector cools down enough, then and only then will it allow you to turn the projector back on again. Computers do very much the same thing, guys. Most computers have got safety sensors built into them. And if your PC gets too hot, especially your CPU, your machine will automatically shut down. And you'll find your PC will refuse to start back up again until the machine has cooled down sufficiently. So if you ever have similar symptoms of your computer, yeah, it's overheating. Heck, guys, this even applies to things outside of the IT world. If you go look at most new modern cars, the majority of them, if they start overheating, the car will automatically shut down. It will refuse to start until the car has cooled down sufficiently, and then the safety sensors will see, okay, you know what, this car has now cooled down sufficiently, and they will allow you to turn the car back on again. So this generally happens if you've got a coolant leak, radiator leak of some kind, maybe there's no coolant in the engine, or just in general the engine is getting too hot. Then the same will occur, actually. So the answer is C. Answer D, we obviously now know, is not the answer. Check the power cable connection. Now, guys, if it was a power cable connection, why is it exactly almost every time 15 minutes, 15 minutes? That doesn't explain that. If it was a power cable connection, it will just be completely random. Question 31. You have a user who reports that when they print, the output on each page printed from the laser printer has duplicate images. Alright, guys, so basically what they mean here is when you print page 2, you can kind of sort of still see part of page 1 on there. And of course, when you print page 3, you'll see part of page 2 on page 3. So it's kind of like a shadow image. They also call this a shadow image. It's also known as a ghost image. It's got many names. It's called duplicate images, shadow images, ghost images. They all mean the exact same thing. Now, there's a very specific reason why this happens. So the question further states, which of the following should you do to fix this issue? Now, to fix the issue, you need to understand what the issue actually is and why it happens. So what happens in your printer, guys, is you've got obviously blank pages in the beginning. Your printer's got these little rubber wheels that'll pick the pages up and move them from point A to point B. So if it starts slipping, then we know it's the rubber wheels that's the issue. But what you'll also find in a laser printer is a drum. Now this drum, guys, gets ink on it, powder ink. After every page you print, it gets residual ink on it, and the drum will clean itself. So if you can print 70 pages a minute of your fast printer, then that drum will clean itself 70 times a minute. I mean, it happens that quickly, guys. But like most things in life, nothing lasts forever. And eventually, one day, that drum will stop cleaning itself properly. And what's going to happen now is there's going to be a little bit of residual ink left on that drum after every print. And that is why you can ever so slightly see a bit of a shadow image or a clone image or duplicate image of the previous print job on the new page. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. So the only way you can fix this is to, well, change that drum. The good news is this is something you hardly ever change. The bad news is this is a very expensive component to go and change, guys. And in some printers, it's quite difficult to change, quite frankly. So you probably know what the answer is. If we look down below, the only answer that's got anything to do with a drum is D. Clean the toner drums and the rollers. Now you can do that. I mean, that's one way to kind of sort of solve the problem. But it's not a proper fix. Now, sometimes in the exam, guys, you're going to get no real answer that's 100% correct. Sometimes it'll be 100% correct. Other times, you just need to look for the closest answer you can find to what would actually be correct. And this is not that case. D is the closest we can find to being correct. But the actual proper answer here, folks, would be to change the freaking drum altogether. That is the actual real answer here. But the closest we can see is just to clean the drum. Upgrading the printer firmware, guys, is going to have no influence on this. Changing the paper weight setting and changing to different type of paper will have absolutely no influence on this. Question 52. You have a user in your company who works with sensitive data. This user's computer is configured with hard drive encryption, so that's good considering they're working with sensitive data. The TPM on their computer is active and hosting the encrypted key. Okay. One of the technicians in your company upgrades the motherboard, the RAM, and video card in this computer. After the upgrade, the hard drive does not boot, and the data can't be accessed from the hard drive. Which of the following should you do to enable the system to boot again and to gain access to the data? Now let me tell you guys what happened here. You'll see at the beginning of the question, that very first paragraph, I specifically mentioned to you guys that the TPM is storing the encrypted key. When you use something like disk drive encryption, for example BitLocker, it works with an encryption key, guys. That key gets stored in the TPM. The TPM, if you don't know, is an actual chip on the motherboard. Now, if you change the motherboard, you basically lost the encryption key. That is why the system does not want to boot. That is why the hard drive cannot go and unencrypt itself. You need the key in the original motherboard. The only way you can fix this problem is to put back the original motherboard. You can keep all the other new parts if you upgraded a whole bunch of stuff, but specifically the motherboard that was originally in this machine, that needs to be put back, even if it's just temporary. Put back the old motherboard, because that's going to bring back the TPM, which is storing the encrypted key. Unencrypt that hard drive, remove the encryption entirely, then remove the motherboard, then put a new motherboard in, and then go and re-encrypt the hard drive so that it can store the new encryption key in the new TPM. That is what happened, and that's what needs to happen. So if you look down below at my answers, which one do you guys think is the answer? It's of course answer C, which says return the replaced motherboard back to the PC. Now obviously that's just going to be temporary, but still, nonetheless. Booting into the BIOS, if you look at answer A, and enabling the TPM on the new motherboard is not going to make any difference, guys, because you need the key from the previous TPM. The only way to get that key is to put the previous motherboard back. Now, enabling the TPM is something you can do eventually after you fix this issue. So eventually, after you've now gotten the encryption key and you've unencrypted the hard drive, you can then go and put the new motherboard in, and then you can go and re-encrypt the hard drive. But to do that, you obviously need to turn on the TPM on the new motherboard. Answer B, turn on EFS for the hard drive. Guys, no, EFS is encryption, but that is encryption file system, which is a benefit you get of the NTFS file system. It's got nothing to do with this specific thing. That encrypts specific files and folders on the operating system. It does not encrypt the whole freaking hard drive, and it does not work with encryption keys like this one. Answer D, use data recovery software to find and recover the hard drive encryption. No, guys, it is specifically designed so that you cannot do that. If I could go and use data recovery software, it would basically then mean that hard drive encryption is useless. The whole reason why we encrypt our hard drives in the first place is so that if someone were to steal my PC or steal my hard drive, they cannot recover the data from that. So if I could just go and willy-nilly use data recovery software to get the hard drive back to where it was, no, guys, that's not possible. It will not work. The only answer valid here is answer C. Question 53. You have a user that has a network cable which is connected to a network jack. The cable fails whenever they move it around. Okay, so it's working, but whenever someone touches it or moves it, then, well, it doesn't want to work. Which of the following can you use to fix this issue which is being experienced? Now, I'm throwing you guys a bit of a curveball here again. I'm asking for 2 answers. I'm trying really hard here, guys, to get you guys used to paying attention to your questions in the exam. I want you guys to read your questions properly. And I want you to pay attention to whether certain words are highlighted in capital letters. I want you to pay attention to whether they want more than one answer. Sometimes they'll say choose 2 or 3 or 4, or they'll just say choose all that apply. I'm doing it on purpose because I'm trying to get you guys into the habit. So we now know it's a faulty cable. It's probably got a little loose connection, a little loose wire. So how can we fix this? Is it a tone generator? No, guys. A tone generator, which is also known as a toner probe, is used to trace a cable. It doesn't fix a cable. Answer B, an RJ45 connector. Yes, we're probably going to need that because we're probably going to have to go and make a new network cable. Or at the very least, try and cut off the old RJ45 connector and put a new one on and just go and recrimp it. So answer B is one of the 2 answers. Answer C, a magnetized screwdriver. That's got nothing to do with this. Answer D, a network tap. Also got nothing to do with this. And in answer E, a crimper. Yes, a crimper is the actual hand tool you use to get that transparent RJ45 connector onto your network cable. So you'll first have to cut open the network cable, exposing the 8 little wires inside. You'll have to get them in the right order, cut them even, shove them into that RJ45 connector, and once you're happy that they're in the right order, you're going to go and use the crimper to basically permanently connect that little connector to that network cable. So there's your two answers, guys, B and E. Question 34. You have a user who reports that their PC does not want to start properly. They report it restarts and it just shuts down. After you start their PC yourself, it does not load the operating system and instead displays a black screen with the message that says data time not set, and that you should go and press F1 to enter setup. Now guys, this question further states you configure the date and time, but the PC still restarts and does not keep the date and time that you go and configure. Okay, so that's interesting. Looks like it's a date and time related issue, but yet it does not keep it after you go and set it. Which of the following would most likely solve this issue? If you guys did my course, you would know, because this is something we would have covered in the course. But in case you guys did not cover the course, let me put it this way, guys. If you have a desktop PC, and let's say you remove the power cable from it, so in other words, there's no power. Have you ever noticed that when you plug the PC back in, it seems to remember the date and the time? It seems to remember your boot order, and if you have any overclocking settings, it remembers that. How is it that your PC remembers all of that if the PC was not plugged in? Well, guys, the way your PC remembers that, if you go check on your motherboard, you'll see there's actually a small little battery, a flat battery on the motherboard. It's referred to as a coin cell battery. Now, those batteries, they don't last forever. Normally, they last a very long time. Normally, they last for 10 years or more. But ever so often, you get a couple of duds where they just fail way earlier than what they're supposed to. So if the battery is starting to get a little flat, you'll notice that the date and the time will start falling more behind, quicker and quicker. And eventually, it just won't keep the date and the time at all. And it also won't know where it's supposed to boot from. So correcting the date and the time won't fix it. You will actually have to go and change the battery on the motherboard. Now, looking at the answers down below, yeah, you probably know what the answer is. It's answer C. Replace the CMOS battery. It's a coin cell battery. So if you look at answer A, restoring the BIOS to factory default settings, well, you can try that, but whatever you go and configure, it's not going to remember that. Now, funny enough, if it does not remember the date and the time, it probably won't remember any other settings of yours as well. So it'll actually, by default, go back to the default settings in most cases. Yeah, how about that? You don't even have to go and restore it. It's probably going to revert back to that by default anyway, since it's not going to remember what settings you had. So it just kind of goes back to the defaults. You can try and change the motherboard. Now, that would solve the problem because the new motherboard would have a new coin cell battery on it, but that is a very excessive way of solving this problem. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of money, and nobody wants to do that when you can actually literally just go and change the battery and be done with it. So both B and C is correct, but C is obviously the better way of doing this. If you look at answer D, reset the motherboard power connections. Guys, if there was power connection issues, the motherboard just won't start at all. Either it will start or it will not start. It's not going to be an in-between there. Anyway, let's move you guys on to question 35 here. You need to allow multiple networks to traverse a switch. So basically, we want to have one switch, but we want to have multiple networks go through that same switch. Now, under normal circumstances, that would sound impossible. Normally, if you want additional networks, you probably have to install additional switches, additional network cables, and all of that. And that's, once again, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of labor, and nobody wants to do that. So what if you could go and use the existing network, your existing switch or switches, and your existing cables, and have multiple networks within that physical network? Yes, it's a thing, guys. You can actually have multiple virtual networks within a physical network. What do we call that? So the question further says, which of the following would allow you to do so? All right, so looking at the options down below, I'm going to get straight to it, guys. The answer is A, VLAN. VLAN, guys, is short for virtual LAN. You can have multiple virtual LANs within one physical LAN. To be able to do that, though, you need a managed switch. You get different kinds of switches. You get unmanaged switches, which are basically cheaper switches with limited functionality. And if you throw a little bit more money at the problem, then you can get yourself a managed switch, which allows you to log into it. And there's many things you can go and configure on it, one of which is VLANs. You can go and create many virtual LANs on there. And for people to go and communicate, they need to not just be on the same physical LAN, but they also need to be on the same virtual LAN. This can be used for many purposes. It can be used for security purposes, just managing traffic, organizing your different kinds of traffic that you've got, you name it. So we now obviously know it's not B, C, or D. SSH is a form of remote connection, guys. You'll be remote connecting to something like a switch, for instance. This will be in console view. So it's not even a graphical view, and this method will be encrypted. VPN, also encrypted. That's once again a remote form of connection. That is to teleport yourself, digitally speaking, where you're not. So if I'm working from home and I VPN to the office, it's as if I am in the office. Not necessarily used to control something remotely. It's more used to try and be somewhere where you're not physically. The last one there, DHCP, that is something that can either be built into a router. It's normally turned on by default on the router. Or you can go and create yourself an actual DHCP server. Either way, the DHCP functionality, guys, is something we use that dishes out IP addresses to devices on a network that does not have them. And then these devices can go and access things like the internet and so on. Question 56. You have a client who is an online retailer who wants to move to the cloud. Okay, no surprise there. Almost everybody wants to move to the cloud these days. They want to use it so they can go and add capacity and also have it removed automatically when demand goes down. Well, that's another reason why you might want to move to the cloud. Cloud gives us many benefits, guys. Which of the following describes this specific aspect of cloud? So think about that, guys. Having the ability to go and add capacity and remove it at will. So if I suddenly need more RAM on a server or more hard drive space on a server, I can just go and add it. If I don't need it anymore, I can go remove it. If I suddenly need a whole new extra server in the cloud, just add it. Don't need it anymore, just remove it. Now on premises we can do that, but it's nearly impossible. It's going to cost you a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of planning. In the cloud, it's nearly instantaneous. What do we call that? Is it high availability? No, guys. And just FYI, all four of these options that I've given you guys there, all four of those are aspects of the cloud. So I want to make this as interesting as possible. So all four of those are legit aspects of the cloud. You just need to figure out which one it is. High availability means something is always available. And a cloud normally gives us a 99.9% uptime guarantee. And depending on what options you choose, obviously the more money you throw at a problem, you can potentially get this up to even higher than 99.9%. On premises, it's nearly impossible to achieve that. If you are, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Answer B, metered utilization. Now, of most forms of cloud, guys, whether we're talking about Microsoft's Azure platform or Amazon's AWS platform and so on and so forth, most of these platforms will only charge you for what you use. And they will only charge you for as long as you use it. So if you don't use something, you don't get billed for it. So if I have a virtual machine in the cloud and I go and delete it, well, then you don't pay for it. Or if I've got a virtual machine in the cloud and I turn it off, well, you'll pay for it, but you're only going to pay for the space that it occupies on the hard drives. You're not going to pay for the RAM that it's using and all that because it's not using any at that point in time. You legit only pay for what you use as long as you use it. With most of the components, if not all of them in the cloud, they bill you per minute. So that is the metered utilization they're talking about. So it's not A, it's not B. Rapid elasticity. There, we talk about the rubber band effect. Now, in this case, the cloud provider, someone like Microsoft, for instance, they will automatically add capacity for you if they see demand goes up, and they'll automatically decrease capacity for you if they see demand goes down. Now, that is rapid elasticity, and that actually is the answer here. You can also go and do this yourself manually, so if you want to go and manually increase capacity or decrease it, you can do that. But they specifically talk about having capacity removed automatically. Now, the fact that they mention automatically, that brings us to the answer of rapid elasticity. That is where the cloud provider goes and automatically adds capacity and automatically removes capacity according to your demand. So that is the answer. So that's what rapid elasticity is, and that is the answer. Shared resources, which we now know is not the answer, that basically refers to the fact that you're generally going to be sharing servers in the cloud with other random strangers out there in the world. These could be individuals, could be companies. So if I, for instance, have a virtual machine in a cloud, and let's say this is running on one of Microsoft's servers, that virtual machine of mine is running on a server, and on that very same server, there's most likely many other virtual machines running from many other random companies across the globe. Now, if you're concerned about security, and if you're concerned about data leakage and things like that, guys, who are we talking about here? We're talking about large, massive entities like Microsoft and Amazon and these. They're absolutely massive companies with massive, insane security. So that kind of stuff doesn't just happen there. I mean, they've got the best of the best of the best working for them. But, if you are a paranoid person, you can obviously go and throw money at the problem and get yourself a dedicated server. But the concept of shared resources means you're sharing resources with other people out there in the world. Question 57. You have discovered that a large number of pages of printed materials are being recycled each day at your company due to materials that are just being left at the print tray instead of being picked up. So in other words, people are printing pages, but they never actually go and collect these print jobs. That happens in a lot of companies, guys. So people are wasting a lot of paper and a lot of ink. Something that companies are not very keen on. Which of the following would reduce and possibly even stop this kind of waste? Alright, so what is the problem? People are printing pages and they're not collecting those print jobs, which means those pages end up getting recycled and we're wasting paper and we're wasting ink. Looking at the 4 options that I've given you guys down below, which one do you guys think will reduce this or even possibly stop it entirely? Is it A, bill each department for the excess material cost? Now, you could do that. I mean, obviously, if people know they're getting billed, then they'll gradually stop doing it, but it's not going to completely stop them. Some people will moan about it. I don't like paying for stuff that I'm not using, and things like that. So I think that will definitely have an effect, but it's not necessarily going to stop them. There's always going to be a couple of people that just don't care. So A is not a bad answer, but that's not the answer we're looking for. Answer B. Enable duplex printing to reduce paper utilization. Now granted, that will waste less paper, but we're still going to use the same amount of ink, and you're still going to have the same issue. If somebody prints a print job, yes, it might be printed double side now, that person still won't collect that print job. So whether it be printed on the one side, or whether it be printed on both sides, it's still a print job that's not getting collected. It's still paper being wasted. It's still ink being wasted. And at the end of the day, you're still going to end up recycling those papers. So yeah, B is even less correct. Looking at answer C, send polite reminders to not print unnecessarily. Now, like answer A, I wouldn't say it's entirely wrong. And, and you might, I suppose, have some people wasting a little bit less paper and ink, but, generally the norm in a company is people just don't care. It's not their paper, it's not their ink. They're just going to shrug their shoulders and go, you know what, it's not my problem. Not my paper, not my ink, not my problem. That's how people feel. So C is not a bad answer, but it's not the best answer. So A and C will have maybe some effect, but it's not going to have the best effect. The answer here, folks, is indeed D. D says require a code before releasing a print job. The only downside about this one is people are going to be less effective. Normally people like to print something, and then when they get to the printer, it's already done. They can just collect it, especially if it's a lot of papers. Now the printer will only start printing after the user gets to the printer and after they actually insert a code of sorts. So it's a little bit less efficient, but at the end of the day, we're going to waste no paper and ink now. The person has to be in front of the printer. They have to enter their specific code. Normally each staff member will have a unique code, and only after they enter their code will the printer actually start printing. And then of course, if the person's already standing there, they will obviously collect that print job. That's normally how it works. Now, what's also great about these codes is if someone does maliciously end up printing a lot of papers and they're wasting paper and ink and whatever, you can actually figure out who that is because these codes are uniquely assigned to people. So if I see we've been going through a lot of paper and a lot of ink lately, we can actually go and check what day this was, what code this was, and we can figure out who that code belongs to, and we can go and query that person and ask them, okay, so listen, Bob, why are you wasting so much paper and ink? And they're going to have to explain themselves. Anyway, folks, the answer is D. Question 58. You have a user who powers on their desktop computer with its monitor, and they see the following error message. No input signal detected. Uh-oh. The display lights on the computer are on. Okay, so that basically indicates that your machine is most likely on. You just don't see anything. Which of the following is a possible solution to this little problem we're facing, folks? Is it A, check the power plug of the desktop computer? No, guys, because you can actually see the lights of the desktop computer. The fact that you can see the lights are on means the computer does have power. And the fact that the screen is displaying an actual message to you, yes, it might say no signal, but the fact that it's able to display a message to you tells us the screen also has power. So not only does the desktop PC have power, the screen itself also has power. So it's definitely not a power-related issue. Answer B, changing the BIOS settings. Now, why would you need to go and change the BIOS settings? If this PC was working fine and now suddenly just displays no input signal detected, that is normally not a BIOS-related issue. And we normally don't go into the BIOS to go and fix issues like that, guys. Answer C, changing the connector setting on a monitor. Yes, guys. And this often happens with TVs as well and stuff. So there's often a button of sorts that says source. So if your screen has multiple ports at the back of it, let's say it's got 1 or 2 HDMI ports, 1 or 2 display ports, possibly maybe a VGA or a DVI port. Now, if you've got multiple ports at the back of your screen and you've got a cable plugged in there, your screen does not necessarily know which port you're plugged into. Some screens will automatically detect which port you've got something plugged into. Other screens, you sometimes have to help them. You've got to tell them which port you want to be on. So if I plug something into HDMI 1 or HDMI 2, I need to go and choose on which port I am. I need to go and choose HDMI 1 or HDMI 2. Otherwise, it's going to look on the wrong port and it's going to say no signal detected because it's looking on the wrong port. You need to help it along. So the answer is C, folks. Answer D, checking the power plug on a monitor. No, because I just said earlier, the fact that the screen tells us no input signal detected, the fact that it's even able to display that means it already has power. It just doesn't have a signal. Alright, moving on to question 39 here, folks. Which of the following Wi-Fi protocols utilizes the 5 GHz frequency and has the best speed? Alright, so if we look at 802.11a, that standard, guys, does indeed use the 5 GHz frequency. It uses only that frequency, but it goes up to a speed of about only 54 megabits per second. It is a very slow one that we normally use in offices and home environments. If we look at 802.11b there, that does not utilize 5 GHz, so that already eliminates it. It only runs on 2.4. It only utilizes the 2.4 GHz frequency, and it's got a maximum speed of about 11 megabits per second. So yeah, definitely not that one. If we look at 802.11n, now that one does utilize 5 GHz. It also actually utilizes a 2.4, but we're going to focus on the 5 GHz part of it. Its speeds can go up to about 600 megabits per second, if not more. So that's obviously way faster than that A standard we mentioned earlier. So far, answer C is the better one out of the two. Looking at the last answer there, folks, 802.11ax. Now that, folks, is a very new frequency. It came out in 2021 during COVID. And obviously, if a frequency is that new, then it's bound to be fast. So now the question is, on what frequency does it actually run? AX, folks, runs on both 2.4 and 5 GHz. So it does support 5 GHz. And let me tell you, it's a heck of a lot faster than the N standard. You can go and look it up. You'll see it's mind-boggling, the speeds. So the answer here, folks, is AX. Question 40. One of your users has dropped their phone and now it no longer responds to touch or tap commands. So my question is not saying that the phone doesn't work. My question specifically just states that touch and tap commands does not work. This device has already been rebooted, but the issue still continues. Alright, so it's not an operating system issue. Which of the following has most likely kicked the bucket? In other words, they're kaput. They don't work anymore. I thought I would work in a little humor there for you guys, so I said kick the bucket. So is it the battery? No, guys. If it was the battery, the phone won't turn on. Or it'll keep turning off. So if the battery could not hold a charge, it'll probably not charge, or it'll keep turning off because it's not holding a charge, or it just won't turn on at all. So it does turn on this device, it just does not respond to touch and tap commands. Battery's got no influence on that. Answer B, digitizer. Yes, folks. Now, most devices that are touchscreen, phones, tablets, things like that, they actually have multiple layers in the screen. Maybe you knew that, and maybe you did not. Now, out of these multiple layers, guys, the outermost layer, ignoring the fact that you might have a screen protector, the outermost layer is the digitizer layer. That is the layer that senses touch from the user, being you. So if you, for example, go and plug in an external keyboard or something like that, you'll find that this phone will most likely work just fine. It's the outermost layer which is now damaged, so it's unable to detect input from the user using that touch thing. So yeah, you're going to have to go get the digitizer fixed, and the only way to do that is generally just to go and replace the whole freaking screen. Unfortunately. We now know the answer is not C or D. C says gyroscope, so that is to allow your phone to know which side is up and which side is down. It kind of works with gravity. So that kind of works hand in hand with that screen rotation thing on your phone and tablet. So if you twist your phone right side up or sideways, then the screen will rotate. That works hand in hand with gyroscope because it lets the phone know which side is down and which side is up. The charging port also has nothing to do with this. I mean, obviously, if the charging port was an issue, the phone just won't charge, and eventually the phone will run out of battery. The phone does start, it just does not respond to touch and tap commands, so it's got nothing to do with the charging port, folks. Question 41. One of your users with a touchscreen tablet is having issues with the screen orientation. Okay, so that's interesting. We literally just spoke about something called gyroscope, and I told you guys that is how a phone is able to determine what side is up and what side is down. Now, the question further states, which of the following is probably causing the nonsense? Yep, that's me typing it like that, guys. So if we look at the available answers that I've given you guys, is it A, the touchscreen digitizer is malfunctioning? No, guys. The question specifically says the screen orientation is an issue. Nowhere in my question did I mention the users are struggling to get the screen to respond to input. The digitizer, as you guys now know, is what is responsible for the touch. It is what's responsible for letting the device know where you're touching on a screen and what you want it to do. It's what allows the user to go and give input to the device. We're struggling with screen orientation, not input, so it's not A. Answer B. The screen rotation is locked. Yes, guys. I'm not sure if you guys have seen, but on most phones and tablets, you've got obviously something called screen orientation. Sometimes it's labeled as gyroscope, but it's normally called screen orientation or something like that. And you can actually go and lock it. So if you go and turn your phone sideways, the screen does not turn sideways. Maybe you purposely want to go and lie on your side. And when you lie on your side, then obviously the phone is kind of on its side as well. And the phone might then think that you're trying to rotate it. Meanwhile, you're actually just lying on your side. That's actually how you want to view the screen. So if you are lying on your side, perhaps in bed, then you might want to go and lock the screen rotation so that the phone does not auto-rotate as soon as it detects that you are, well, moving the screen in that position. So yeah, the answer is screen rotation is locked, folks. Answer C, the phone is too hot. Really? No. Guys, if a phone gets too hot, it'll either turn off, or it'll restart, or it just becomes non-responsive. Answer D, the screen protector on the tablet is damaged. Once again, guys, that's going to have no influence on this. If your screen protector is damaged, it might cut your finger, it might look cracked, the screen may or may not respond to you because maybe it's possibly messing with the digitizer, but that's about it. So the answer is B, folks. Question 42. Which of the following ports allows a user to transfer data, but in clear text specifically? Is it port 21? Now, port 21, guys, is used for FTP, File Transfer Protocol. Now, FTP also uses port 20, just FYI. And normal FTP, guys, yes, that is used to transfer data. And yes, it is in clear text. So that is indeed the answer here. If we look at answer B, 22, that is used by two things. It's used by SSH, which is an encrypted way of connecting to something like switches and routers and stuff. It's normally in console view, but it is encrypted. And port 22 is also used by something called SFTP. Essentially the same thing as FTP, it's just in, well, encrypted view. So it's not B because the question specifically says it needs to be in clear text. Answer C, port 80 is used for HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So that's normal clear text web browsing. So it might be in clear text, but that's web browsing. It's got nothing to do with transferring files. Port 8080 is also the exact same thing. It's once again HTTP and normal clear text. So it's the exact same thing. It's just an alternative port number. And then the last one there, 443, is also web browsing, except this time it's not in clear text, it's in an encrypted view. So the only answer here, guys, is answer A, port 21, which is for FTP. Question 43. You have been tasked to put together a workstation that is required to have mirrored storage. It will utilize two 2TB drives that support one failure. Now you'll see in my question I mentioned this is going to be mirrored storage. So those two drives, guys, that are both 2TB each, they'll actually be clones of one another. So this might sound like it's 4TB worth of storage since it's two drives and each of them are 2TB. But in reality, it's just 2TB of storage because whatever is on the one drive will be a clone on the other drive. That is why my question says it supports one failure. Now, with that in mind, which of the following best meets this requirement? Now, this is a RAID-related question, guys. And I can tell you now, there's going to be lots of RAID-related questions in the exam. Some of them are multiple choice, kind of like the one that I've got here. And some of them will, of course, be PBQs, those performance-based questions that I mentioned around question 20 in this video. Now, folks, PBQ-wise, there's about 20 to 25 possible PBQs they can ask you, and they'll randomly ask you between 3 and 8 in the exam. And out of those possible PBQs, a lot of them are RAID-related. So you'd be wise to clue yourself up on what RAID is and how this actually works, both theory-wise as well as practical-wise. If you feel a bit unsure about the PBQs, then maybe go have a look at my Patreon. The link for that is in the video description down below, like I said in the video earlier. Now, looking at the RAID types we've got here, guys, some of them will give you performance, some of them will give you redundancy, and some of them, depending on which one you choose, will give you both performance and redundancy. Now, you get many kinds of RAIDs out there, guys, but the ones that I've listed there, not all of them are real, and these are not all the ones that you get out there. Now, the real ones in my list there, guys, is RAID 0, RAID 1, and RAID 5. RAID 2, I just needed a fourth answer, so I just kind of shoved in a random one there. So RAID 2 does not actually exist. RAID 0, RAID 1, and RAID 5 are the only ones you need to know at A+ level, and that's the only ones they will ask you about in the exam. You do get other ones out there, like RAID 10 and 15, and things like that, but those are normally combinations of RAID 0 and 1, and RAID 1 and 5, and so on and so forth. Now, for pretty much all forms of RAID, guys, you need a certain amount of drives at a minimum. So if you look at RAID 0, you need a minimum of 2 hard drives. RAID 1, you need a minimum of 2 hard drives. RAID 2 obviously does not exist. And RAID 5, you need a minimum of 3 hard drives. Now, the fact that RAID 5 needs a minimum of 3 hard drives kind of already eliminates it from my list. RAID 2 is already eliminated because I kind of sucked that out of my thumb. So the answer is going to be between RAID 0 and RAID 1. RAID 0, folks, is used for performance purposes. This will speed up a machine, but it does not give you redundancy or fault tolerance. So it's not going to be a mirror drive. It's not RAID 0. So now that I've said that, you probably know what the answer is. It's RAID 1. RAID 1, guys, you need a minimum of 2 hard drives, and we do have that, as you can see in my question. 2 of those drives are 2TB drives, and RAID 1 does something called mirroring. It's used for redundancy purposes. So now with RAID 1, if one of your hard drives fails, you don't lose any of your data. You simply take out the failed hard drive, put a new fresh one in, and it's going to start replicating back to that new fresh hard drive. That's going to obviously take a bit of a while to do so, but at the end of the day, you did not lose any data. Question 44. You have multiple users at the side of one of your clients who can't print through a network printer that is connected to a print server. Which of the following should you try first to resolve the problem? Now, I'm purposely putting a certain word there, guys, in capital letters because they will do the exact same thing in the exam. Certain words with certain questions will be in capital letters. They tend to use words like the word first, like I just did now, the word best, the word least, the word most. All of those words are the words they like to go and put in capital letters. Be very careful because often that means there's more than one answer or there's a bit of a curveball. Now, in this case, there might possibly be more than one answer, which is why I said first. I don't want to know necessarily which ones are the correct answer. I want to know which one do you do first. Alright, so what's the problem? Multiple users at a site cannot print. They're all printing through a network printer that is connected to a print server. Answer A says, have all the users restarted their PCs? No, guys. What is the chances of all the PCs having to be restarted? That's very unlikely. It's either just going to be one PC that needs to be restarted if it's just one person that's being affected, or you'll have to go and restart the server in some extreme cases. But we don't normally say, hey, all the people need to go and restart all their PCs. We don't normally do that, so it's not A. B says replace the USB cable. Very unlikely, guys, because normally with a network printer, these tend to be connected via an Ethernet cable, like a LAN cable, not a USB cable. So it's unlikely to be the USB cable. Answer C, reinstall the drivers on the user's PCs. Now, think about that for a moment, guys. If someone's drivers was working, what is the chances of someone's drivers just randomly stop working? So if they could print previously, it won't just randomly stop working. It's very unlikely. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it's extremely unlikely. Now, what's even more unlikely is that all the users suddenly need to go and reinstall the drivers. The chances of that happening is next to nothing. It just doesn't happen, guys. So because of the process of elimination, the answer here is obviously D, and yes, that is the answer. D says clear the print queue. We call that the print spooler. Now, on the print server, guys, if someone can't print or nobody can go and print, one of the very first things we do, not necessarily the only thing, but one of the very first things we do is we clear the print queue. Sometimes one of those print jobs is just too big, one of them is corrupt, or it's a document that just can't print, another printer just kind of hangs there and it just kind of freezes or it just kind of lags and doesn't know what to do with itself. So by clearing the printer queue, the print spooler, you are now clearing all those print jobs, and now it's going to start from scratch with a clean slate. And you'll find often in most cases that's going to resolve the problem. So the answer is D, folks. Question 45. Which of the following forms of public cloud gives you the least amount of control? Now, I'm purposely just going to give you guys 3 here because that's the 3 main ones we get. I suppose I could have probably put a 4th one there. But I figured, you know what, let's just keep it to 3 for now. Those 3 are all valid forms of public cloud, guys. I did not make them up. They do exist. So when it comes to public cloud, those 3 are the most common 3 types of public cloud you get and the most widely used forms of public cloud. You get many, many other kinds of public cloud as well. But those 3 are the main 3 and the most commonly used ones. Now, out of those 3, guys, which one gives you the least amount of control? Well, if you look at infrastructure as a service, that, guys, is the one that gives you the most amount of control. That would, for example, be something like a virtual machine, if I've got to give you an example here. If you have a virtual machine on a platform, let's say like Microsoft Azure, there's an example for you. You can maybe not see the hardware or the networks, but you can choose the hardware and networks of that machine. So if you want to go and create a virtual machine, you can choose exactly what the specs for that machine would be. You can choose how many CPUs you want, how powerful they should be, how much RAM you want, how many hard drives you want, how big they should be, how fast they should be. You can choose what network this machine should be on. So you can choose all the hardware specs you want. You just can't see it and you can't touch it, but you can still go and choose it. Once you've chosen the hardware, you can choose any operating system you want. And once that operating system is installed in that virtual machine and you go and connect to it remotely, you've got full control. So if infrastructure is a service, yes, you are relinquishing some control, but honestly, guys, you still have an insane amount of control. If you look at answer B, software as a service, that is the one where you've got the least amount of control, guys. So yes, that is the answer, but I'm going to cover that last, since that's the least amount of control you've got. So let's go and do platform as a service first. So platform as a service, that's the last one there, guys. That's the middle one. You've got less control than infrastructure as a service, but you still have more control than software as a service. Platform as a service, from a cloud perspective and an IT perspective, is normally things we don't want to do and things we don't have time to do. So if you look at something like Active Directory, if you guys know what Active Directory is, normally on premises, that is a role you would have to go and install on a server. So you'd have to go and get yourself a physical or virtual server. You might have to go and build it. You might have to go and potentially install the server operating system. You might have to go and potentially add what we call a role on that server. And the role you'll have to go and add is the ADDS role, Active Directory Domain Services. Eventually, you'll have to go and promote that domain controller, and eventually you're going to get to a point where you can go and create your domain and user accounts and all that stuff. So it's not rocket science, but it will damn well take you a whole day. Now, if you look at platform as a service, the cloud provider has done most of the work for you, and you honestly just kind of jump in at the last moment and reap the benefits. That is platform as a service. You can just jump in and start creating user accounts. How convenient, right? Now, looking at software as a service, which we know is the answer, that is honestly just software applications that would normally be installed on your machine or the user's machine. And instead of it being installed on your machine or your servers and using your RAM, occupying space on your storage and using your CPU power, now it's installed somewhere else on the cloud provider's hard drives. So it's occupying space on the cloud provider service. It's using their RAM, their CPU cycles, and it's literally just displaying to you or the user via the internet. So all you need is a screen and a good internet connection. So this is a great way to get around compatibility issues and stuff like that. So if a user, for example, does not have a lot of RAM and they need to run a program which is very RAM intensive, you know what? Doesn't matter. Because software as a service is not going to use your RAM, it will use the cloud provider's RAM. So it's very great at getting around compatibility issues, guys. Question 46. You have been provided with a company laptop and mobile device. You are instructed to download something from the internet using your laptop. There is no Wi-Fi or Ethernet. Which of the following can you make use of to solve this little problem that you find yourself in? Now, I've given you guys 4 options there. Let's see if you guys can figure this one out. I did actually honestly cover this thing kind of sort of indirectly earlier in this video. It all depends on whether you guys paid attention. So if you paid attention this whole video, maybe you'll know what the answer is. So if we look at VPN, guys, that is just a way to go and remote connect from one location to another. You can think of this as digitally teleporting yourself. So if I am working from home, I can VPN to the office and it will be as if I am at the office. It's not really a way to go and control something remotely. It's just a way to kind of be somewhere where you're not. So if I need access to certain resources at the office, like a server, you can VPN to the office and it'll be as if you are at the office, logically speaking. But VPN is not going to give you internet on this laptop of yours. It's not going to solve that problem. If we look at answer B, NFC, that is short for near field communication. So it's a way to go and connect something like your phone to another phone, or to go and, for example, make a payment. So if you've got a bank card and you bring it near a speed point, a point of sale system, you can make a payment by bringing your bank card near the speed point. You can do the same with your phone. If you've got a digital banking card on your phone and you go into your bank, you can go choose your digital banking card and you can make payment like that. So that is what near field communication is for. It is not used to provide wireless internet. It does not do that. Answer C, hotspot. Now that is something. That is the answer. Because my question originally said you were not just provided with a laptop, we also provided you with a what? A mobile device. So on that mobile device of yours, guys, you can go make yourself a hotspot. A hotspot is a way or a method for you to share the internet on that mobile device with your laptop. There's other ways to do this, and that's the topic we actually discussed earlier in this video. Another way to go and do this, which is not something I recommend, is to go and use something called tethering. So that would also be a method to share the internet on your mobile device. You would be using a cable, like a USB cable, or you'd be using Bluetooth to share the internet on that device. Now, you really don't want to have to go and use Bluetooth to share the internet on that device. That's going to be excruciatingly slow. And you also really don't want to have to go and use a USB cable. Hotspot is honestly the best way to go about it, folks. So that is the answer. Bluetooth, to just connect your phone to your laptop via Bluetooth is not going to do anything. That will just connect it and you can share data, but it does not by default share the internet. To share the internet, you would actually have to go into your phone and go into something called tethering, and there you would have to go and choose Bluetooth. So Bluetooth on its own won't do anything, guys. So the answer is hotspot. Question 47. Which of the following wireless standards are only capable of 5 gigahertz frequencies? Now, you need to be careful here, guys. I'm not asking you which of these frequencies can run at 5 gigahertz. I'm asking you which ones can only run at 5 gigahertz. You need to be very careful of these kinds of questions in the exam. There's going to be some of these in the exam. There's quite a lot of them in the pool. Maybe you'll get one, maybe you won't. But I know for a fact there's quite a lot of them in the pool, so your chances are quite high of getting questions like this. Some of these wireless standards or wireless frequencies questions in the exam will ask you just in general, which of these standards can run at 5 gigahertz? And some of them, like mine, will say which ones can only run at 5 gigahertz. Some of them will ask you which ones can run at 2.4. And then some of them will say which ones can only run at 2.4. Some of them will say which ones can run 2.4 and 5. So there's quite a few ways they can go and phrase this. Be very careful. If I say which ones can run at 5 gigahertz in general, that's going to be certain answers. If I ask you which ones can only run at 5 gigahertz, the answers will be very different, folks. Alright, so looking at the options here, you'll see I did say choose all that apply, so I did not say how many answers there is. So let's see if you guys can figure it out. Which ones out of these can only run at 5 gigahertz? If we look at the first standard there, guys, 802.11a, it runs only at 5 gigahertz. So that's one of our answers. If we look at 802.11ac, that one, folks, runs only at 5 gigahertz. If we look at 802.11ax, that one runs at 2.4 and 5. So it can run at 5, but it doesn't run just on 5. So that kind of eliminates answer C. If we look at the one that says 802.11n, that one runs on 2.4 and 5. So that one's eliminated. If we look at the one that says 802.11g, that one runs at only 2.4. So it's only, but it's only 2.4. So it's the wrong frequency. So that one's eliminated. The last one there, folks, 802.11be. That one runs at 2.4, at 5, and 6 gigahertz. So that one's definitely eliminated. Absolutely does not run at just 5 gigahertz. So, if you guys remember, the only two that runs only on 5 gigahertz here, guys, is A and B. There you go. Question 48. You have to provide scalable services to a client. Which of the following cloud computing concepts will achieve this? Now, this is also something that I did kind of sort of cover earlier in this video. We did kind of have one or two cloud related topics. And I did kind of explain these topics that we see down below. Now, if you look at the 4 answers I've got down below, guys, I did not make those up, not per se. I made them up in a sense of I have to give you guys 4 answers, but those are not fake things. All 4 of those are real things in IT, and all 4 of those are real things that you get in the cloud. Real cloud computing concepts. So I did that on purpose to make this as hard as possible to see if you guys actually understand these. Why? Because they will hammer you on these in the exam. These days, guys, everything is about remote technology and cloud technology and virtual technology. There's a lot of questions in the exam about cloud technology. So you need to know what metered utilization is. You need to know what resource pooling is, what rapid elasticity is, and what on-demand is. If you don't know what those are, you're going to struggle. So if you don't know what those are, guys, after I've explained this, if it does not make sense to you yet, I would definitely advise you to go and look up these. Go look for another video. Go hit a book or something and make sure you understand these concepts. And when it comes to scalable services, guys, this means to have the ability to go and add capacity as you need it, or to go and remove capacity as you need it. So if you need more RAM, or if you suddenly need to go and decrease RAM, or if you need more storage, or if you want to go and decrease your storage, or if I need more servers, or if I want to go and decrease the amount of servers I've got. This is what scalability is. This is what's meant by this question of mine. So if you want to go and do that, we call that rapid elasticity, folks. We did cover this earlier in the video. Rapid elasticity is not just having the ability to go and add those resources or remove them yourself. This will happen automatically in most cases. So if the cloud provider sees you need more resources, they will automatically increase it for you. If they see you don't need it, they'll automatically decrease it for you because you pay for what you use in the cloud. And if they decrease it for you, that will obviously bring down your costs. Now, speaking of paying what you use, that is answer A. Metered utilization, guys, means you pay for what you use. If you don't use something in the cloud, you don't pay for it. That's what metered utilization is. Resource pooling, also something we've explained earlier in this video, is the concept of sharing servers in the cloud, guys. Whenever you put something in the cloud, it's on a server of the cloud provider, but on that same server is stuff or resources from other random people in the world. So you're sharing servers with other people in the world. That's what resource pooling is. Now, if you don't like that, you can obviously go and throw money at the problem and get yourself a dedicated server, but that will cost you an arm and a leg. And then the last one there, on demand, means you can immediately get what you want. So if you need something on premises, or if you want something on premises, guys, yeah, you're going to have to go and budget for it, you're going to have to go and plan for it, and there's bound to be a couple of issues. In the cloud, if you want something, let's say I want more resources, you can immediately just go and add it. If you no longer need it, you can immediately go and decrease it. So it's almost like that rapid elasticity. But this on-demand basically just means you can get what you want immediately as and when you need it. You don't have to go and wait for it. It's immediately available. You just need to decide, do you want it or do you not want it? Question 49. Which of the following channels would commonly be used on an 802.11 network? Now, if you don't know what I mean in this question, guys, if you look at your 802.11 standards, those are wireless standards. There's quite a few of them. Literally just a couple of questions ago, we spoke about the wireless standards we get. Now, if you have a wireless standard, let's say you're using the 802.11g, which is pretty much the most common standard we use in office environments and home environments. So if you're using that, and let's say I'm using that too, there is a potential then that these two could interfere with one another. So if we are sitting in the same office, and there's an access point near you, and there's an access point near me, and our access points are too close to one another, our access points can actually interfere with one another. Even though they're broadcasting on the same standard, they can actually interfere with one another. So to avoid this interference, there's channels you can go and choose from. Think of these as channels on a walkie-talkie. So you'll put your access point on a certain channel, and I'll put mine on a different channel. And this is going to get rid of that interference. Well, whether it gets rid of the interference entirely depends on what channel exactly you choose. And that's what this question is about. Now, for those of you that don't know, when we talk about the 802.11 wireless standards, there's 11 channels in total that you can go and choose from. And out of those 11 channels, there's 3 of them that have got zero interference with one another. The other ones all have a little bit of interference with one another, a little bit. But the 3 that specifically have zero interference with one another is channel 1, channel 6, and channel 11. Now, that's not necessarily what my question is asking here. My question just wants to know which channel out of those ones down below, if you look at my answers there, which channel is commonly used with 802.11. Not necessarily which one gives you the least interference, just which ones are associated with 802.11. Well, guys, I told you there's only 11 channels. So it's from channel 1 all the way through to channel 11. So if you look at answer B, that one says channel 13. That does not exist on the 802.11. If you look at channel 21, does not exist. If you look at 443, does not exist. The only answer there, guys, is the one that says 6. 6 is one of your 11 channels on the 802.11 wireless standards. So that's our answer. Right, question 50. We're almost at the end, guys. Just another 10 or so more questions, and we're going to get to the end of this video. Looking at all the following listed data and charging ports, guys, which of them has a non-directional connector? So there you guys go. There's a bunch of USB connectors there. Some of them are old, some of them are new. Now, what I mean by non-directional, guys, it means it doesn't matter how you go and put it into the port, it'll still work. All of those, except for one, can only go in one way. If you look at USB A, that's like a normal USB cable. It can only go in one way. If you try and flip it the other way around, it's not going to fit. USB-C, that is the answer. If you go look at USB-C, guys, you can go run a search on Google right now. It is the only cable where it doesn't matter if you flip it the other way around. It can still fit. It'll still work. All the other ones there, mini USB, micro USB, those are slightly older technologies, but they can only go in one way. If you flip them 180 degrees and you try and put them in, it's not going to fit. Will absolutely not work. Question 51. One of your users brings you their smartphone device for repair. They complain that they can't receive or make calls. They also complain they can't connect to Wi-Fi. Which of the following is the problem? Well, that's an interesting one. Is it tethering? No, guys. Tethering provides internet to nearby devices wirelessly via Bluetooth or via USB cable. But it will not prevent the device from having connectivity in any way or form, so it's not that. VPN is a form of remote connectivity to some place like the office, so it's got nothing to do with losing connectivity in your device. If you look at answer C, airplane mode, also sometimes just called plane mode. Yes, that is the answer. So most phones will have some sort of mode, which is normally called airplane mode, plane mode. It's not always the exact same name. What that does is it turns off most wireless communication on that device. The phone normally can't make phone calls, can't receive phone calls, won't receive text messages, they won't be able to connect to the Wi-Fi in most cases, things like that. Now, a lot of people tend to put their phone on airplane mode once they get onto a plane, but when they get off the plane, they often forget to take that mode off. They forget. So now they don't know why the phone doesn't want to work, meanwhile it's still on airplane mode. This is also something that happens to people accidentally, and let me tell you, this has happened to me once or twice, where I went into my settings, and I don't know how, but I accidentally clicked on airplane mode. Now it's on. Now, for the rest of the day, I can't figure out why I can't receive any phone calls, anything like that. And then eventually, I come to the conclusion that, you know what? Maybe I put on airplane mode by accident. Let me go check. And then when I go check, lo and behold, yep, it's on. So that's what airplane mode does, guys. That's the answer. The last answer there, we now obviously know is incorrect. Disabled hotspot. That's not going to do anything. If you disable the hotspot, guys, which is disabled by default, mind you, another device just won't be able to connect to your phone's internet. That's it. But by default, your hotspot is in fact disabled. You normally have to go and turn it on for another device to be able to connect to your phone's internet. Question 52. You have been called in to come and help set up a computing system for a client that wants to use it for video editing. So you're going to need certain resources for that. Looking at the available options, which should you install that'll benefit the client? So you need to choose 2 from this list of mine, guys. I'm giving you guys 6 to choose that you guys think will benefit this client of mine that wants to use their machine for video editing. Is it NAS? Well, not a bad option, but not the best option either. Maybe they can go and store their videos there, but it doesn't actually help with the actual editing itself. A docking station. No, that's just going to make things more convenient if you want to move your PC. But nowhere in this question did I mention anything about, making things more convenient in the sense of moving PCs. So, no. It's not A. It's not B. Answer C. An SSD. A solid-state drive. Yes. That's one of the answers, guys. So when it comes to video editing, you need a very fast hard drive. Otherwise, it's going to lag. It's going to be very slow. So when you try and edit that video, it's just going to be slow and non-responsive because it needs to read and write a lot to a hard drive. Now, something interesting about SSDs, guys, is if you've got yourself one of those new M.2 drives, those obviously go a heck of a lot faster than your old school traditional SSDs. Now, those drives, obviously because of them having the ability to go so fast, they tend to get hot. Now, it does not mean they will be hot by default. They're only hot, or they only generate heat when you do certain tasks on them. One of the tasks that puts the most strain on something like those M.2 drives, guys, is video editing. So if you are going to go put a drive like that into your PC, and if you are going to use it for video editing, yes, you'll get amazing speeds, but please make sure you've got a heatsink on that M.2 drive. Otherwise, it's going to overheat. So just a little tip I want to give you guys here while we're on the topic. If we look at the rest of the answers, guys, a gigabit NIC, a gigabit network interface card. Why does it matter what internet speed I've got? So when it comes to video editing, I need performance on the machine itself, perhaps, not my network. So SSD will provide me that. If we look at answer E, dual monitors. Yes, guys, that is the second answer we're looking for. Now, it's not a must, but it will certainly make video editing a heck of a lot easier if you've got 2 computer monitors. And then the last one, they're hypervisor. That is something we use for virtual machines. We don't need virtual machines for video editing, so that's completely out. The answers here, folks, is C and E. Question 53. Which of the following devices can have the capability to provide power to devices that you go and connect to it? Now, if you look at the 4 answers I've given you guys, you can actually go and connect devices to all 4 of those. But which one of those can provide power to the device that you go and connect to it? Is it a router? No, guys. A router will provide internet access, but it does not provide power. Is it a switch? Yes, that's the answer, guys. A switch will give you access to the network, and if there is internet on that network, it also provides you with internet access, And depending on what kind of switch you've got, so if you've got yourself a PoE switch, then yes, it can provide power. Not all switches will do this, but if you've got the right switch, yes, it can provide power to devices like, let's say, a VoIP phone, an access point, and the likes of those. A repeater, well, you get two kinds. You get the kind of repeater that'll go and repeat a wireless signal. You get the kind that'll go and repeat a wired signal. Both of them are just used to go and extend a network cable or a signal, but it does not provide power per se. That is just used to give access to a network wirelessly to devices. It does not provide power to devices. In fact, it actually is one of those devices that needs power via network cable in most cases. Question 54. You must install an IP phone in a small office with an unmanaged switch. When you plug the RJ45 connector of the network cable into the phone does not turn on. Which of the following would solve this problem? Alright guys, so basically what's happening here is you'll find there are a lot of devices in your network which can turn on as soon as you plug a network cable into them. One of these devices is a VoIP phone. Other devices that does this as well would, for example, be an access point. As soon as you plug the network cable into it, it often turns on. Now, why is that? If you understand why that happens, then you'll understand what the problem might be here. So, which of the following would solve this problem? Is it A, replace the IP phone? No, guys, just because the phone does not turn on does not necessarily mean there's something wrong with the phone. It could be that there's maybe something wrong with the cable, or perhaps there's something else. Is it answer B? Configure the phone first by logging into it remotely. Well, guys, how do you expect to log into this phone remotely if the phone does not even turn on? So that's a bit of a trick question that I threw in there for you guys. I want to see if you guys are awake and if you're paying attention. And I know we're at the end of this question pool, so some of you guys are probably falling asleep at this point in time. Answer C, install a PoE injector. Yes, folks, that is the answer. So the PoE is short for Power over Ethernet. That means you are sending power through a network cable like a LAN cable. And we often do this with devices like phones, access points. Sometimes we've got equipment outside like a dish perhaps. These equipments, these appliances, they get powered via a network cable. Now, it's not a must. You'll find that these IP phones can actually be plugged in directly to a power source and sometimes the access points as well. But it does make our lives a lot easier and it does make your cable management look a lot better as well. So if you plug a phone into a network cable and it does not turn on, it does not mean there's something wrong with the network cable. It could just be that there is no power being sent through that network cable. Now, in an actual office environment, a medium to a large office environment, normally they use a managed switch. And a managed switch will often be a PoE switch, which sends power into a network cable. Now, if we look at my original question, I stated that they are using an unmanaged switch. Now, yes, you do get unmanaged switches that do have PoE capability on some of their ports, but those are quite rare. So the fact that my question says this is a small office, and the fact that it says it's an unmanaged switch, which means it's very likely to be a switch that does not have PoE capability. So if that is the case, what can we do? What is the quickest and the easiest way to solve this problem? If you look at the answers down below, guys, a PoE injector is a small little boxy. Normally has about 2 LAN ports on it. One says LAN in. The other one says LAN out with PoE written next to that as well. And you actually literally just go and plug this into a power source. And then your one network cable you plug into the LAN in, the one that does not need power. And then the device that does need power, for example the phone, that network cable coming from the phone would be plugged into the LAN out, the one that says PoE. As soon as you plug that network cable into that phone, the phone will turn on. Now, we obviously know the answer is not D, upgrade the Ethernet cable to the latest specification. That's not going to have any influence on this. It'll just make the connection faster, but it's not going to make the cable magically have power, no. Question 55. You notice that the network switches in your company have reached their end of life and that they need to be upgraded. Which of the following should you do first? Alright, so you guys will see I've given you guys 4 steps there. Which one do we do first if you want to go and upgrade something like the switches in your company? Well, I'm going to get straight to it, guys. You're going to go and propose the change. You can't do anything in a proper company environment before you go and propose it. So we first propose that change. And then depending on what the change is, a board will have to possibly go and approve that change first. If the change gets approved, then you can go and schedule the change. When are you going to actually go and do this? And then eventually, when that time comes, you will then go and do the actual implementation of the change. So implementation is the last stage, and proposing is the first stage. I suppose what could also be the last stage, which is not listed here, is to go and document everything you've done, keeping logs and all of that kinds of stuff. Question 56. You must ensure that a printer is assigned the same IP address even if all IP addresses have been depleted. Which of the following network configuration concepts will actually achieve this? Is it lease? No, guys. Lease is how long your dynamic IP address is valid for. So if you have a dynamic IP address, in other words, one that's assigned automatically via DHCP, those IP addresses normally last for an X amount of time. How long? Well, that depends on what the lease is. Most technicians will normally configure the lease to last for about approximately 24 hours. It could be shorter, it could be longer. But once the lease is over, let's say you made it 24 hours, once the 24 hours is over, then the IP address just won't work. You'll still have it, but it won't work because the lease has expired. You would have to renew that IP address or get another one. Now, this has got nothing to do with giving a printer the same IP address over and over. Is it answer B, a reservation? Yes, folks, that is the answer. Think of this as a table in a restaurant. If you want a specific table in a restaurant, or if you want to make sure that you actually get a table in a restaurant, something you can go and do is reserve a table. Then you know you will get a table, and if you're lucky, you can even choose what table you want in some cases. Now, with IP addresses, you can do that with a DHCP. You can go and reserve a specific IP address for a specific device. So when you go and create this reservation, one of the things you'll need is the MAC address of this device. So if it's a printer, for example, you will need the MAC address, which is also known as a physical address of that printer, and it's going to go and dish out that same IP address to the same printer every day because of that MAC address. Now, it's worth noting that not all DHCPs can do this, guys. If you're going to be using the DHCP that's built into a router, there's a chance that you might be able to do this. There's a chance that you might not be able to do this. It depends on the router. Some of them can do it, some of them cannot. But if you are going to go and use an actual DHCP, which is on an actual server, then you'll definitely be able to go and do this. So we know the answer is B. VLAN, no, guys. That is to go and create virtual LANs within your physical LAN. It's got nothing to do with IP addresses. Answer D, exclusion. Yes, that is something we do with IP addresses. It's also got to do with DHCP. So answer A, answer B, and answer D. All three of them has got to do with DHCP. Answer C has got nothing to do with DHCP. Now, an exclusion, guys, is if you want to exclude a certain IP from being dished out. So in your DHCP, you normally have a certain range of IP addresses that will be dished out to devices. We call that range your scope. So if you, for example, have 100 specific IP addresses that will be dished out, that will be your scope or your range. Now, in that scope or range of yours, if you have an IP address that you do not want to have dished out for whatever reason, maybe because it has been statically assigned to something like a server, if you don't want a certain IP or certain IPs to be dished out, you can go and exclude them. That is the exclusion we're talking about. And then that IP will just never be dished out, which means you will not have an IP address conflict on a network. You don't want an IP address conflict. If that happens, then both devices get kicked off the network. Question 57. You need to separate broadcast domains. Which of the following devices can be used for this? Now, if we look at a hub, guys, that is something that does broadcasting. It's very well known for that. We actually call it a stupid device or a dumb device. I'm not making this up. That's actually what people call it. And the reason why it's called that is because it broadcasts out of all of its ports. So if I am connected to that hub and you're connected to that hub, they honestly look like a switch, by the way. If I send you something, that hub will broadcast that something out of all of its ports. So there's no real privacy and it just doesn't really work. Now, that is a legacy device, folks, which does not get used anymore. And it only has one broadcast domain. So if you plugged into that, then you'll be on the same network. A switch, you are not necessarily on the same network because a switch can do something called VLANs, for instance. but a switch cannot separate broadcast domains. If we look at a router, now routers are normally known for giving people access to the internet. So that is the bridge between your private network and the public network. It converts your private IP to a public IP. We normally call that the gateway. So the router will route you across the internet, but that's not the only thing it does, guys. A router can also get you to other networks within your network. So if you have a huge company, and let's say you implemented what is known as subnetting, that means you've got multiple networks inside of your company. You subdivided your network by doing something called subnetting. Then if you want to get from one network into another network, you would have to use a router. Now, if you want to go to a specific network, you need to know that network's network ID. And if you want to go and communicate with everything in that network, you would need to know its broadcast IP address. Either way, what we use for that is a router. So that is indeed the answer. A wireless access point, guys, well, that's the same as a switch. A switch is just a device that you go plug physically into if you want to connect to a network. And an access point is just a device that you go and connect to wirelessly if you want to be on a network. So they essentially do the same thing. The one is just wired and the other one is wireless. Question 58. You have made several upgrades to a client's computer and you have determined that the current PSU, in other words the power supply unit, will not provide enough power. Which of the following would be the biggest cause for insufficient power? Since you've done a couple of upgrades now. Would it be adding more RAM? So if you go and add more RAM, would that be a big cause for insufficient power? Now, adding more RAM, guys, will take more power, but it is so small. That'll honestly just be like 3 or 5 watts. It's not even worth mentioning. It's going to basically make no difference, if I'm being honest. If we look at answer B, adding a CMOS battery. Now, guys, normally a motherboard has a CMOS battery by default. Now, whether it has one or does not have one, it will have no influence on the amount of power your PC draws. The CMOS battery, its purpose is honestly just for your BIOS to help remember its settings, like the BIOS password, like your boot order, like any possible overclocking settings that you may or may not have. That is the purpose of the CMOS battery. Now, if you go and add one or if you go and remove it, it'll have no influence on the actual power that your power supply provides. If we look at answer C, upgrading the firmware, that will also have absolutely no influence on the power that your power supply provides. If we look at answer D, upgrading the graphics card. Yes, guys, that also has an influence. So both RAM and the graphics card has an influence on the power draw of your PC, but a graphics card is honestly one of the biggest power-hungry devices you'll find in pretty much any machine. The amount of power a graphics card draws, you cannot even begin to compare that to the amount of power that a RAM chip draws. You cannot even begin to compare it. In most gaming rigs, half the power draw comes from the graphics card, if not more. I kid you not, literally just that one device. So that's the answer here. Question 59. Which of the following are default ports for web browsing? And I want you guys to give me 2 answers. So I've given you guys 6 ports to go and choose from. If you look at these 6 ports that I'm giving you guys, which of those 2 are the default ports for web browsing? You guys really need to know your well-known port numbers, or should I call them common port numbers for this exam. I've said it before and I'm saying it again. You need to know this for this exam, guys. So port 21, that is for FTP, File Transfer Protocol. It's got nothing to do with web browsing, that's for files. Port 23, that is Telnet. That is to go and connect to something remotely, like a switch or a router. This is normally done in console view and it's normally done in clear text. So it's a bit unsecure, but essentially it's a form of remote connectivity. Port 53, that is DNS. So that's basically going to go and convert IP addresses to names and names to IP addresses. So when you go to a web browser and you type something in like youtube.com, your device does not know what that is. And it will contact something like the DNS, for instance, and it's going to ask the DNS, hey, what is the IP address for youtube.com? So that's one of the things it does. It does something called name resolution. So it's not A, B, or C. Answer D, port 80. Yes, guys, port 80 is used for HTTP. That is normal, clear text web browsing. So that's one of the 2 answers. Port 443. Yes, that is another form of web browsing. That is HTTPS. That is the encrypted version of web browsing. So there is our 2 answers. And then the last one, obviously, we now know is not correct. Port 3389 is an actual port number that is associated with RDP, which is Remote Desktop Protocol, guys. Alright, question 60. Alright, guys, and just a quick reminder, after I cover this question, don't disappear. I do want to mention a couple of things at the end of the video, but I think some of them you do know. I mean, for example, if you're looking for more practical-based questions, that you can find on my Patreon. So if you want to see what those are like for the exam, if you're stressed about the simulations, go check out my Patreon. And then we also have a Discord server and a Reddit if you guys want to go and join those or make some sort of posts, so go check those out as well. Right, so question 60. One of your users don't have any audio from the built-in speakers of their laptop. Okay. In Device Manager, now Device Manager is what shows you all your hardware, where you've got drivers installed, and whether these devices are enabled or disabled, and all that kind of stuff. Now in Device Manager, it shows a down arrow on the audio device. Now what does it mean when we see a down arrow on a device in Device Manager? If you know what that means, then you'll know what the answer here is, folks. Which of the following will resolve the problem? Is it updating the driver? No, guys, the speakers was probably working before. Why would I now need to go and update the driver? So that could solve the problem, but it's very unlikely. Answer B, enabling the device. Yes, guys. When we see a down arrow on something in Device Manager, it normally indicates that that specific device has been disabled, either by yourself or somebody else like the user or possibly another technician. But generally it means the device has been disabled. So if you want to get that device to work again, you're going to have to right click on it and you'll see there's an option that says enable device. So it's literally just been turned off and you need to go and turn it on. That is indeed the answer. Increasing the volume would have made no difference because they said there's no audio coming from the speaker. So we can assume they've tried turning up the volume. And then the last one, replacing the speakers, I mean, that's a bit excessive. So if the speakers just randomly stop working, that's just suspicious. Normally we don't replace the speakers because of that. And if we were to, that's a bit excessive. Alright folks, we have finally reached the end of this video. So this is version 3 of my practice questions for A+ Core 1. If you have not watched version 1 or version 2 yet, please go check those videos out as well. Those will definitely help you with your A+ exam. There will be more videos coming out for Core 2 as well, so stay tuned for that if you guys still need to go and do Core 2. And then once again, guys, if you're looking for more practical-based questions, PBQs, that's basically the simulations you guys can possibly encounter in the exam, that I cover on my Patreon. So there's the link on the screen. I've got that link in the video description down below, so go check it out. And then, folks, like I've mentioned earlier, there is a Discord server. So if you know what Discord is, if you've got that, feel free to join our Discord server. It's called Free IT Training. There I've got study groups. You can go and ask questions. There's lots of free resources there. There's lots of discussions there. There's many other people studying for A+ and other CompTIA courses as well. So you can go and, just collaborate, basically. There's also a Reddit. It's still relatively new, so it's very quiet at the moment. But you're welcome to go and post anything CompTIA related there. So if you've got a score report where you passed or failed, if you've got questions about the exam, anything like that, you're more than welcome to go and check it out. It's called CompTIA_plus. So would love to hear from you guys there. Right, folks, I will see you in the next video. Best of luck with your exams. Talk to you in the next video.